I paid for every glass and every flower at that party, only to realize I was not even on the guest list. I watched my aunt's live stream as my mother toasted to my absence, saying she was glad I was not there to ruin the aesthetic. They called me a freeloader while I was paying $3,900 a month to keep their lights on. So I did not cry. I just shut it all down. My name is Claire Butler, and usually, at this time of night, the only thing I am listening to is the hum of the industrial refrigerators in my studio. I sat alone in the center of Lumen and Vine, my design and floral production warehouse in Charleston. The air here was always kept at a precise 55 degrees, a temperature that preserved the blooms but seeped right into the marrow of your bones if you sat still for too long. I was wrapped in an oversized wool cardigan, the kind that smelled faintly of eucalyptus and cold brew coffee, staring at the screen of my phone. The silence of the warehouse was heavy, broken only by the intermittent rattle of the compressor kicking on to keep the thousands of dollars of inventory from wilting. It was a Saturday night. My hands were throbbing. I looked down at them for a moment before unlocking my screen again. They were not the hands of a debutante or a Southern belle, despite what my last name might suggest in this town. My knuckles were swollen. There was a fresh, angry scratch running from my thumb to my wrist where a rogue branch of hawthorn had snagged me earlier that morning. My cuticles were stained with chlorophyll and the dark, stubborn grime of potting soil that no amount of scrubbing could fully remove. These were the hands of a worker. These were the hands that had built a business from the ground up, and right now, these hands were holding a window into a party I was currently paying for, yet was not welcome to attend. I had opened Facebook out of pure boredom, expecting to see the usual feed of engagement announcements and sponsored ads for wedding expos. Instead, the first thing to pop up was a notification, Paige Donovan is live. My Aunt Paige, my mother's sister, the black sheep, or so my mother liked to call her, primarily because Paige worked as a forensic accountant and had an annoying habit of asking questions that made people uncomfortable. I tapped the notification, expecting perhaps a video of her cats or a rant about tax season. The screen filled with the shaky handheld footage typical of a Facebook live stream. The audio crackled with the roar of a crowd, the clinking of crystal, and the smooth, low undertone of jazz. My stomach dropped. I knew that jazz playlist. I had curated it myself 3 weeks ago. The camera panned, and the pixelated image sharpened into a scene that made the breath catch in my throat. It was the patio of my parents' house on the Isle of Palms, but it had been transformed. I recognized the linens immediately. Dove gray velvet, imported from a supplier I had spent 3 years building a relationship with. I recognized the centerpiece's cascading arrangements of white O'Hara garden roses, ranunculus, and Italian ruscus. I knew them because I had ordered the stems. I knew them because I had sketched the design on my drafting table right here in this studio. I had paid the invoice for the catering company that was currently circulating trays of mini crab cakes and prosciutto-wrapped figs. I had put down the deposit for the tent rentals to ensure the humidity did not ruin my mother's hair. I had transferred the funds for the high-end lighting rig that bathed the entire backyard in a soft, golden amber glow. I had done all of it under the guise of helping my mother prepare for her intimate summer gathering. I had assumed, foolishly, that the invitation had simply been implied. I was the daughter, I was the financier. Surely, I would be there. But as I sat in the freezing dark of my studio, I realized I was the only person not there. Paige's camera moved through the crowd. I saw neighbors I had grown up with. I saw local politicians my father, Robert, was trying to impress. I saw clients I had worked with, people who likely assumed I was too busy working to attend. And then, the camera settled on the head table. My mother, Diane, was standing up. She looked radiant. I had to give her that. She was wearing a dress I had bought her for her birthday 2 years ago, a shimmering silver thing that caught the light perfectly. She held a glass of champagne high in the air. She was laughing. That practiced, tinkling laugh that sounded like money but felt like ice. The audio on the live stream was surprisingly clear for a moment as the jazz faded out for the toast. "To family," Diane announced, her voice slightly slurred, beaming at the crowd. "And to perfection, everything tonight is just flawless." The crowd murmured their agreement. Someone shouted a compliment about the flowers. "My flowers." Diane giggled, leaning heavily against my father's shoulder. "Oh, stop. You know, I have to thank the Lord for small mercies." She paused for dramatic effect, looking directly at someone off camera. "I have to thank the Lord that Claire isn't here tonight." I froze. The cold of the studio suddenly felt like nothing compared to the chill spreading through my chest. "If she were here," Diane continued, her voice dropping to a stage whisper that the microphone picked up perfectly, "she would be fussing over every little napkin. She's so intense. You know, she's just not polished. She would have absolutely ruined the aesthetic we have going on here." Laughter. A ripple of genuine, amused laughter ran through the guests. Then, a voice cut in from the side. It was a voice I knew better than my own, my younger sister, Brielle. Brielle stepped into the frame, phone in hand, likely recording her own story for Instagram. She looked perfect, of course. She was the Southern lady influencer, the golden child who monetized her lifestyle of leisure, a lifestyle I subsidized. "Oh, Mom, be nice," Brielle said, though her tone dripped with condescension. She flipped her hair, smiling at the camera Paige was holding, thinking it was just another guest filming. "Claire is doing what she does best, working. Someone has to pay for the boring stuff, right?" "Exactly," my mother cheered, taking a long sip of champagne. "She's the worker bee. We are the queens. She is such a freeloader." Though, Brielle added, her voice lower now, intimate, as if sharing a juicy secret with the room. "I mean, honestly, she clings to the family name like a barnacle. If it weren't for Daddy's connections, that little flower shop of hers would be dust. She just rides our coattails and expects a seat at the table." "Freeloader," my father grunted, nodding in agreement as he adjusted his tie. "Always has her hand out. Doesn't understand the value of $1. The camera jerked abruptly away. I suspected Aunt Paige had heard enough, or perhaps she had dropped the phone in shock. The screen went black for a second before the stream ended. I sat there in the silence, the phone dark in my hand. Freeloader. The word echoed in the empty warehouse, bouncing off the concrete floors and the steel beams. I looked down at my hands again. The scratch on my wrist was throbbing. I had been up since 4 a.m. today. I had hauled 50-pound buckets of water. I had climbed ladders to hang installations until my calves burned. I had negotiated with wholesalers in Dutch auctions while my family was still asleep. I had built Lumen and Vine from a garage startup into the premier event design studio in Charleston without asking my father for a single dime. In fact, the flow of money had only ever gone one way. I opened my banking app. Face ID let me in instantly. I navigated to the scheduled transfers tab. There it was, a recurring monthly transfer labeled Home Maintenance, $3,900, every single month, for the last 5 years. That was nearly $234,000. That did not even include the emergencies. The time the roof leaked, the time the HVAC unit at the beach house died in the middle of July, the time Brielle accidentally maxed out her credit card and needed a bailout to avoid a credit score hit that would ruin her brand deals. I had paid it all. I paid it because I believed the lie. I believed what they told me, that the family was asset-rich but cash-poor, that they were struggling to maintain the lifestyle that kept the family name relevant, and that it was my duty as the capable one, the business owner, to help preserve the legacy. Legacy. Suddenly, a memory from 16 years ago clawed its way to the surface, sharp and vivid. I was 18 years old. I had just been accepted into a prestigious design program in New York. I had gone to the bank to withdraw the funds from the savings account my grandmother, Nana Rose, had left for me. It was supposed to be my tuition. It was supposed to be my freedom. I remembered standing at the teller counter, the smell of stale peppermint and old paper in the air. I remembered the teller's face, a kind, older woman named Mrs. Higgins, turning pale as she looked at the screen. "I am so sorry, honey," she had said gently. "The account is empty." "That is impossible," I had stammered. There was $50,000 in there. It was withdrawn yesterday, she said, turning the monitor so I could see. By the joint custodian, your father. I had gone home, screaming, crying, demanding answers. My parents had sat me down at the kitchen table, the same table where they were currently dining without me, and told me to grow up. We had to make an investment for your sister, my father had said, not even looking up from his newspaper. Brielle has a chance to get into the pageant circuit. That requires capital. We invested in her career. You are smart, Claire. You can get loans. You can work. Brielle needs the help. You don't? They had stolen my inheritance to buy pageant gowns and coaching for a 12-year-old, and they had gaslit me into believing that being the one who didn't need help was a compliment, a badge of honor. I had worked 3 jobs to get through college. I had eaten ramen and slept on futons while Brielle posted photos of her new convertibles. And when I finally made it, when I finally built something real, they came back, not with apologies, but with outstretched hands and guilt trips about family duty, and I, like a fool, had opened my wallet. I had convinced myself that by paying their bills, I was buying their respect. I thought that if I kept the lights on, they would eventually see me. But they did not see me. They only saw a utility. I was not their daughter. I was not a person with feelings who might be hurt by being excluded from a party she paid for. I was a generator. I was a battery pack. I was something you plugged into when you needed power, and something you kicked into the closet when guests arrived, so you did not have to look at the ugly machinery. Freeloader. The audacity of it was almost impressive. They were drinking wine I bought, standing on a patio I maintained, under lights I rented, calling me the parasite. I looked at the screen again. The next scheduled transfer of $3,900 was set to go out tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. My thumb hovered over the transaction. My heart was pounding, not with sorrow, but with a cold, hard clarity that felt like the snap of a dry twig. For years, I had treated my relationship with my family like a delicate orchid. I had watered it, fed it, pruned it carefully, hoping it would bloom. I had tolerated the thorns because I thought the flower was worth it, but looking at that transfer amount, looking at the evidence of my own stupidity, I realized something. It was not an orchid. It was a weed, a parasitic vine that had wrapped itself around my life, choking the breath out of me while it grew fat and green on my resources. You do not water a weed. You do not negotiate with it. You pull it out. My eyes drifted to the clock on the wall. It was just past midnight. The party on the Isle of Palms was likely still in full swing. They were probably opening another bottle of the vintage Cabernet I had selected. A thought, clear and sharp as a floral shear, sliced through my mind. It is time to cut the stems. I did not close the app. I sat up straighter in my chair, the cold air suddenly feeling bracing rather than biting. I tapped on the transfer details. I was not going to cry tonight. I had shed enough tears for Diane and Robert Butler. Tonight, I was going to do what I did best. I was going to manage the logistics, and the first item on the agenda was a total power failure. I did not send a text message. I did not call to scream. I did not throw my phone across the room. Those were the reactions of a daughter, and that role had been terminated effectively the moment my mother raised her glass to mock me. Instead, I reached into my tote bag and pulled out my MacBook Pro. I set it on the stainless steel work table, pushing aside a bundle of discarded eucalyptus stems. The aluminum casing was cold against my palms. I opened the lid, and the screen came to life, illuminating the dark studio with a harsh, white glow. It was time to go to work. I logged into my primary banking portal. The interface was familiar, a grid of numbers and accounts that I checked every single day for my business. But tonight, I was not looking at the accounts for Lumen and Vine. I was looking at my personal checking account, the main artery that fed the parasitic organism living on the Isle of Palms. I navigated to the Transfers and Payments tab. My eyes scanned the list until I found it. Recurring transfer, Diane and Robert Butler, frequency monthly, amount $3,900. I clicked on Edit. The system prompted me with a question. asking if I wanted to skip the next payment or modify the amount. It was designed to make you hesitate, to make you reconsider interrupting the flow of capital. I did not hesitate. I moved my cursor to the small, red text at the bottom of the window. Cancel series. A dialog box popped up, asking for confirmation. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring transfer? I pressed enter. The screen refreshed. A green banner appeared at the top. Success. Your recurring transfer has been canceled. I felt a strange physical sensation, like a tight band around my chest had suddenly snapped. It was not relief, exactly. It was the recoil of a gun. I was not done. That was just the mortgage and the utilities. I needed to cut off the lifestyle. I switched tabs to my credit card issuer. I held a platinum card that I had taken out 6 years ago. It had a high limit, intended for purchasing bulk floral inventory from international growers. Over the years, I had added 3 authorized users, Diane, Robert, and Brielle. The agreement was simple. They were to use the cards for emergencies only, a flat tire, a medical copay, a flight change due to weather. I rarely checked the line-by-line statements for their cards, because I simply paid the total balance every month along with my business expenses. I had been too busy building an empire to micromanage their spending, or so I told myself. The truth was, I had been too afraid of what I might find. I clicked on Manage Authorized Users. I pulled up the transaction history for the last 30 days for Brielle's card. Yesterday, a charge for $600 at Sephora. 3 days ago, a charge for $1,200 at a boutique on King Street. Last week, a charge for $250 at a sushi restaurant. I scrolled down to my mother's card. 2 days ago, $400 at the Sanctuary Spa. 5 days ago, $300 at a high-end liquor store. My father's card was less active, but the charges were heavier. A single charge from last week for $800 at a golf pro shop. I stared at the screen. These were their emergencies: a new putter, a facial, a restocking of the wine cellar for the party I was currently excluded from. I looked at the total balance due. It was staggering, and I had been paying it, month after month, like a silent partner in their fraud. I clicked on Brielle's name first. There was a toggle switch next to her card icon labeled Freeze Card. I clicked it. The switch turned from green to gray. Status locked. I moved to Diane. Click, locked. I moved to Robert. Click, locked. I imagined the next time Brielle tried to tap her card for a matcha latte or a new pair of shoes, the terminal would beep. The cashier would look at her with pity. Declined. The humiliation would be small, private, and absolute. But I knew my family. Money was only one part of their control. The other part was access. They lived a life of digital luxury that I subsidized. I opened a new window and went to the provider for the fiber optic internet service at their house. It was the highest-tier business package, necessary, they claimed, for my father's consulting work and Brielle's content creation. I logged in. The dashboard showed the network activity. It was spiking. Of course it was. They had 50 guests, all connecting to the Wi-Fi, uploading videos, streaming music. I went to the administrative settings. I changed the Wi-Fi password from Butler Manor to a random string of 16 alphanumeric characters that I generated on the spot. Then I found the button I was looking for, Restart Gateway. I clicked it. On the Isle of Palms. The music would stop. The smart lights that I had paid for, which were currently set to a warm amber, would likely reset to their default, harsh factory white or flicker in confusion. The guests trying to upload their stories to Instagram would see the loading wheel spin and spin until it failed. It was petty. It was also tactical. Disruption creates confusion. Confusion breaks the narrative. Next, I went to the streaming services: Netflix, Hulu, HBO, Spotify. We shared a family plan for all of them. Naturally, I was the primary account holder. I went through them one by one. Settings, sign out of all devices, change password, confirm. I did this for every single service. The TV in their living room would go black. The iPad my father used to watch news in bed would ask for a login he no longer had. The playlist at the party, if they managed to get the internet back via cellular data, would stop playing because the premium account was gone. Then came the rideshare apps. My account was linked to their phones so they could get around safely. I opened the app on my desktop. I saw a ride currently in progress, likely a guest they had sent a car for, or perhaps Betrayal sending something to a friend. I removed their profiles from my account. I unlinked my credit card. If they wanted to go anywhere tomorrow, they would have to enter their own card numbers. If they had any that worked. As I was going through the account settings for my primary Google account, the one that housed my emails, my drive, my entire digital life, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. I was in the security and recovery section. I wanted to ensure that when the inevitable storm broke tomorrow, they could not hack back into my life. I looked at the recovery email address listed for my account. It was not my backup work email. It was Diane, Butler Gmail.com. I stared at it. I had created this account when I was 22. I remembered setting it up. I had not put her email there, which meant that at some point, during one of the many times I had visited home and left my laptop open, or perhaps years ago when she insisted on helping me organize, she had added herself. She had given herself a backdoor key to my entire digital existence. She could reset my passwords. She could read my emails. She could see every contract, every client, every bank notification. This was not just financial abuse. This was surveillance. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I deleted her email. I added a new recovery address that no one in my family knew. I set up two-factor authentication to an authenticator app on my phone, bypassing SMS so they could not try to clone my SIM card, a paranoia that suddenly seemed very rational. I changed the password to a phrase that was 30 characters long, a nonsensical combination of words that had meaning only to me, related to the first bouquet I ever sold. I was not safe yet. I needed records. If Paige was right, if this went as deep as she implied, I needed ammunition. I went back to the bank portal. I navigated to the Statements tab. I did not just want the last month. I wanted history. I started downloading. January 2023, February 2023, March, April. I downloaded the PDF statements for my personal checking, my savings, and the credit card with the authorized users. I opened the Finder on my Mac. I created a new folder on my external hard drive, an encrypted drive I usually used for backing up client design files. I named the folder Evidence. I dragged every single PDF into that folder. The progress bar zipped across the screen. Green, done. I opened the folder and checked the files. They were there. The paper trail of my exploitation. Thousands of dollars. Tens of thousands. A fortune siphoned off in increments of $3,900 and $400 spa visits. I sat back, the adrenaline beginning to curdle into a cold, hard resolve. I had secured the perimeter. Now I needed to secure the physical space. My studio, Lumen and Vine, was my sanctuary. But my family treated it like an extension of their living room. Brielle would drop by unannounced to borrow vases for a shoot. My mother would bring her friends to show off her daughter's little shop. They knew the keypad code. I picked up my phone. It was 12:05 in the morning. I called the security company that monitored the warehouse. "This is dispatch. Can I help you?" A tired voice answered. "This is Claire Butler. Account number 4490. I said, my voice steady and devoid of sleepiness. "I need to change my access code immediately. Everything okay, Ms. Butler?" "Yes," I said. "I just realized my previous code has been compromised. I need to set a new master code, and I need to disable all previous guest codes." "We can do that remotely. Go ahead with the new code." I gave him the numbers. "Done," the dispatcher said. "The new code is active. The old ones will trigger the silent alarm." "Thank you," I said. "And please add a note to my file. If the alarm is triggered tonight or tomorrow, do not call me to verify. Dispatch police immediately." "Understood." "Dispatch immediately." I hung up. Then I opened the text thread with Marcus, my studio manager and assistant. He was a night owl, usually awake editing photos. But even if he was asleep, he needed to see this first thing. I typed Marcus. Emergency protocol, effective immediately. I have changed the door codes. I will text you the new one in the morning. Do not let my parents or Brielle into the building under any circumstances. If they show up and refuse to leave, call 911. Do not engage. Do not apologize. This is a trespass situation. I will explain later. Sent. I looked at the laptop screen one last time. The browser window with the live stream was still open in the background. Though the tab was silenced, I clicked on it. The image was frozen, likely because I had just killed their internet connection, but the last frame buffered before cutting out completely. It was my mother, mouth open in a laugh, her head thrown back, her eyes squeezed shut in delight. She looked so happy. She looked so unburdened. And why shouldn't she be? She had a daughter who paid for her joy and absorbed her pain. I moved the cursor to the X on the tab. Click. The browser closed. The desktop background, a high-resolution photo of a dark, moody floral arrangement I had done for a winter gala, stared back at me. The silence in the studio changed. 10 minutes ago, it had felt hollow. A space defined by my absence from the family. Now, it felt dense, heavy, secure. I had locked the doors. I had changed the codes. I had cut the lines. I was no longer a daughter waiting for an invitation. I was a vault that had just spun its dial to the final locking position. I reached for my water bottle. My throat was dry, parched from the internal heat of processing the betrayal. I took a long, slow drink. The water was cool. I glanced at the digital clock on the corner of my screen. It was 12:11 in the morning. A new day. My family was likely running around in the dark right now on the Isle of Palms, resetting routers, blaming the service provider, apologizing to guests for the sudden lack of music. They would be annoyed. They would assume it was a glitch. They would assume the universe had made a minor error that would be corrected by morning. They had no idea that the glitch was me. I set the water bottle down. I did not feel like crying anymore. The sadness had evaporated, replaced by the cool, comforting logic of a balance sheet that finally, for the first time in my life, was going to zero out. They thought I was playing a game of emotions. They thought I would send a tearful text, or post a sad quote, or show up at the door begging for an explanation. They thought I was seeking validation. They were wrong. I was closing the books. The sun came up over Charleston with a deceptive calmness. Inside the studio, the light filtered through the high clerestory windows, hitting the dust motes dancing in the air. I had not slept. I had spent the hours between midnight and dawn reorganizing the walk-in cooler, color-blocking the hydrangeas, and stripping the thorns off 300 stems of Ecuadorian roses. My hands were busy. My mind was a fortress, and my phone was lying face down on the drafting table like a dormant grenade. I knew exactly when the first pin was pulled. It was 9:02 in the morning. The phone buzzed against the metal surface of the table, a harsh, vibrating rattle that cut through the soft hum of the refrigeration units. I finished taping a grid onto a glass vase before I wiped my hands on my apron and picked it up. The message was from Diane. There was no "good morning." There was no "how are you." There was certainly no "I am so sorry I humiliated you in front of the entire Lowcountry on a Facebook live stream last night." The text read, "Card declined at the catering company. They are threatening to pack up the brunch service. Fix immediately." I stared at the screen. The audacity was so pure, so chemically perfect, it was almost breathtaking. She was not panicking yet. She was annoyed. In her mind, this was a clerical error. It was a snag in the seamless tapestry of her life, a tapestry I was responsible for weaving. She assumed I was sitting by the phone, waiting to serve, and that I would scramble to call the bank, apologize profusely, and smooth it over so she could eat her shrimp and grits in peace. I placed the phone back on the table, face up this time. I did not reply. I went back to the roses. I had a wedding consultation at 2 o'clock, and I needed to mock up a centerpiece. I worked with mechanical precision. Cut, strip, place, cut, strip, place. At 9:15, the phone buzzed again. "Diane, Claire, did you get my text? The manager is standing here. It is embarrassing." I imagined the scene. The catering manager, likely a man named Steve, whom I had hired 5 times before, holding a card reader that flashed a red error light. My mother, smiling tight-lipped, trying to laugh it off as a bank security measure. I snipped a stem of eucalyptus. The scent filled the air, sharp and medicinal. At 9:30, the tone shifted. Pick up the phone. This is not funny. It was not funny. She was right about that. It was expensive. And for the first time in my life, the bill was not coming to me. I let the morning drift by. I brewed a second pot of coffee. I answered emails from actual clients, brides who thanked me, corporate event planners who valued my time. I moved through my studio, my domain, feeling a strange lightness in my chest. It was the absence of weight, the weight of their expectations, which I had carried for so long, had been dropped. Then came the second wave. At 11:30 in the morning, the screen lit up with a name that usually made my stomach clench, Betrayal. My sister did not call. She did not text to ask what was wrong with Mom. She texted because she had a need, and I was the dispenser of solutions. Hey, the text began. No greeting, just the demand. I have that brand partnership shoot at 1 o'clock. The rustic chic vibe, I need the vintage props you have in storage. The brass candlesticks and the velvet runner. Also, my car is acting weird. I think it is out of gas and I do not have my wallet. Can I swing by and take the studio van? I need to load the stuff anyway. I read the message twice. She wanted to borrow my inventory and my vehicle to shoot content for a career that I had financed. Likely to post photos where she would talk about her hustle and her eye for design. She treated me like a rental house that did not charge fees. She treated me like the help. I looked at the studio van parked in the loading dock. It was fully fueled, clean, and branded with the Lumen and Vine logo. It was a tangible asset of my business. I typed a reply, my thumb hovering over the screen. No, that was it. Just 2 letters. Then I deleted it. No. Even a refusal was engagement. Even a no gave her something to push back against, something to argue with. Silence was the only wall she could not climb. I did not reply. By noon, the atmosphere on the other end of the digital line had shifted from annoyance to panic. The realization was setting in. This was not a glitch. This was a blockade. My mother sent a new barrage of texts at 12:15. The pretense of the clerical error was gone. She knew I was doing this. You are overreacting. She wrote, I was stressed last night. I had too much champagne. You know how I get. I did not mean it. Then, a minute later, the follow-up. Because Diane Butler could never just apologize without a condition attached. Stop being dramatic. Claire, it is unbecoming. Turn the money back on. Your father is furious. I laughed. A dry, short sound in the empty studio. She thought stress was an excuse for telling a crowd of 50 people that her daughter was a blight on her aesthetic. She thought furious was a weapon that still worked on me. At 12:45, my phone rang. The screen displayed Dad. I did not answer. I watched the phone vibrate until it went to voicemail. A moment later, the notification popped up. New voicemail from Dad. I hesitated. My father's voice had always been the gavel in our house. When Robert spoke, the matter was settled. I pressed play, turning the volume up so his voice echoed slightly in the warehouse. Claire, his voice boomed, deep and laced with a tremor of suppressed rage. This is your father. I do not know what kind of game you think you are playing, but it ends now. I am standing here at the club, and my card was just declined for a round of golf. Do you have any idea how that makes me look? You are embarrassing this family. You are making us look weak. You will fix this account issue immediately, and you will come to the house tonight to apologize to your mother for ruining her brunch. Call me back. Click. I stood there, staring at the phone. You are embarrassing this family. Not, we hurt you. Not, why are you doing this? Just concern for the image, concern for how he looked to the other men at the club. He was not worried about whether I could afford rent. He was worried that the facade of the wealthy patriarch was cracking because his sponsor had pulled the funding. I tapped the share icon on the voicemail. I saved the audio file to the folder on my drive labeled Evidence. I did not call him back. At 1:30, having received no response from me and likely having missed her shoot window or been forced to Uber with her own money, Brielle took the war to the only battlefield she understood, the internet. I received a notification that I had been mentioned in a story, but not by Brielle directly. It was a mutual acquaintance, a girl I went to high school with, who had reposted Brielle. I opened Instagram. I went to Brielle's profile. She had posted a text-only story, set against a beige, melancholy background. The font was small and delicate, meant to evoke sympathy. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to support you are the ones who want to dim your light the most. It read, "Toxic family members will do anything to sabotage your success because they are jealous of your shine. Sending love to everyone dealing with negative energy today. I am choosing peace." I felt a surge of bile rise in my throat. Jealous of her shine. I had bought the light bulbs. I had paid the electric bill. I had built the stage she was standing on. And she had the nerve to call me toxic because I stopped paying for the spotlight. But the narrative was already taking hold. I could see the hearts floating up on the side of the screen. People were reacting. They were messaging her, telling her to stay strong, telling her she was brave. They saw a victim. They did not see the leech. Then came the message that truly knocked the wind out of me. It was from a cousin on my father's side, a woman named Sarah who lived in Atlanta. We rarely spoke, but we were friendly enough. "Hey, Claire." The text read, "I saw Brielle's story. Is everything okay? Aunt Diane called my mom this morning and said you were having some kind of breakdown. She said you cut them off because you were spiraling." I frowned, typing back quickly. "What do you mean?" Sarah's reply came instantly. 3 dots dancing for a moment before the bubble appeared. "Well, Mom said Diane told her that you have been living off them for years, that the studio is actually theirs, and they just let you run it to give you something to do. She said they finally had to cut your allowance because of your spending habits, and now you are lashing out. I just wanted to check on you. Do you need money for rent?" I dropped the phone. It clattered against the table, sliding a few inches. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from a rage so hot it felt like it could melt the steel table. They had flipped the script entirely. For 5 years, I had sent them $3,900 a month. I had paid their mortgage. I had paid their credit cards. And they had told the world that I was the charity case. They had told the family that I was the one being supported, that I was the freeloader. It made perfect, twisted sense. How else could Robert and Diane Butler explain their lifestyle? How could they explain the vacations, the cars, the parties? They couldn't admit their daughter was bailing them out. That would admit failure. So they invented a lie. They claimed they were the benefactors. They claimed they were supporting me. By painting me as the dependent, they protected their ego, and now, by cutting them off, I had inadvertently triggered their contingency plan. Paint me as the ungrateful, unstable child who was biting the hand that fed her. If I released the truth now, it would look like I was lying. It would look like I was trying to cover up my own failure. They had inoculated the entire family against the truth. My phone rang again. It was a local number I recognized. It was the high-end party rental company in West Ashley. I picked it up, my voice steady but tight. "Lumen and Vine, this is Claire." "Hi, Claire. It is Tom from Charleston Event Rentals," the man said. He sounded uncomfortable. "Look, I hate to bother you, but I have an outstanding invoice here for the Butler party last night. The card on file was declined this morning when we tried to run the balance. That is my parents' party." "Tom," I said, "you need to call Robert." "I did," Tom said. "He said to call you. He said well. He said you handle the bookkeeping for the family trust, and that you must have made a mistake with the card limit." I closed my eyes. They were not just lying to the family. They were using my professional reputation as a shield. "And Claire," Tom added, his voice dropping, "I am looking at the contract here. You are listed as the secondary billing contact. If they do not pay legally, we have to come to you. It is $4,000. "I did not sign that contract. Tom," I said, my voice hardening. "It has your digital signature. he said. The one from the DocuSign. My blood ran cold. I had not signed a contract for party rentals. I had paid for things. Yes, but I had never signed as a guarantor, unless they had used my email. The email my mother had access to until last night. Unless they had used my name and my reputation to secure credit they could not get on their own. Send me the document. Tom, I said. Right now? Okay, but Claire, are you guys okay? Your dad sounded convincing. Send the document, I said, and hung up. I stood in the center of my studio. The smell of flowers, usually so comforting, suddenly felt cloying and suffocating. This was not just a family spat. This was not just about cutting off the money. This was a setup. They had built a cage for me, bar by bar, year by year. They had taken my money, yes, but they had also stolen my narrative. They had stolen my name. They had set it up so that if I ever tried to leave, I would look like the villain, and I would be left holding the bag for their debts. They were counting on my silence. They were counting on my shame. They were counting on the fact that Claire Butler always fixed things, always took the high road, always protected the family name. They were counting on the daughter they thought they knew. But that daughter died last night when the Wi-Fi went out. I needed help. I did not need a therapist. I did not need a friend to cry to. I needed someone who understood numbers. I needed someone who knew how to dissect a lie that was buried in ledgers and email logs. I scrolled through my contacts. I stopped at a name I had not called in years, mostly because my mother had forbidden it. Aunt Paige. I pressed the call button. It rang once, twice. Well, a sharp, familiar voice answered, cutting through the static. I was wondering how long it would take you to call me after I posted that video. Aunt Paige, I said, my voice cracking for the first time that day. I need you to come to the studio. I am already in the car, she said. Put the coffee on. We have a lot of forensic work to do. The heavy metal rolling door of the studio rattled, a sound that usually signaled a delivery of fresh stems from the airport. But today, the person standing on the concrete loading dock was not a delivery driver. It was my Aunt Paige. She did not look like a woman who had just inadvertently started a family war. She looked like she was arriving at a crime scene she had been predicting for a decade. She wore a sharp charcoal blazer that seemed to absorb the ambient light, and she carried a thick leather briefcase that looked heavy enough to crack a rib. She stepped inside, her heels clicking rhythmically against the polished concrete floor. She did not hug me. She did not offer a pitying look or a casserole. She walked straight to the large work table where I had set up my command center, placed the briefcase down with a heavy thud, and looked me dead in the eye. I need you to know something before I open this bag, she said, her voice even and devoid of the southern drawl my mother affected when she wanted something. I did not press that button by accident. I froze, my hand hovering over my laptop. The air in the studio, already cold, seemed to drop another 10 degrees. What? I whispered. The live stream, Paige said, unbuttoning her blazer and taking a seat on a metal stool. I did not fumble my phone. I did not forget to lock the screen. I framed the shot. I checked the audio levels, and I waited for Diane to start her toast. I knew exactly what she was going to say because she has been saying it behind your back at every bridge club and country club luncheon for the last 5 years. I stared at her. A flash of anger flared in my chest, the idea that my humiliation had been orchestrated, but it was extinguished almost immediately by the cold logic of her words. You wanted me to hear it, I said. I needed you to see it, Paige corrected. I have tried to tell you, Claire. For years, I have dropped hints. I have asked questions. But you were sleepwalking. You were so desperate to be the good daughter, to be the savior, that you refused to look at the math. And in my line of work, we know that people lie, but numbers do not. I knew the only way to break the spell was to force you to watch them burn you in real time. She reached for the latches on her briefcase. Snap, snap. I am a forensic accountant. Claire, she said, opening the lid. I spend my life reconstructing financial debris to find out where the bodies are buried, And I've been watching the smoke rising from your parents' house for a long time. She pulled out a stack of files, color-coded and tabbed. I need access, she said. I know you downloaded the statements last night. I need to see them. I need to see the emails. I need to see every credit card transaction you have access to. Because what I have here is speculation based on public records and my own observations. I need you to confirm the internal flow. I did not hesitate. The time for privacy was gone. I turned my laptop around and pushed it toward her. The folder is named Evidence. It is on the desktop. Paige put on her reading glasses. For the next hour, the only sounds in the studio were the clicking of keys, the rustling of paper, and the occasional sharp intake of breath from Paige. I watched her work. She was surgical. She did not just read numbers. She traced them. She opened multiple windows, cross-referencing dates, times, and vendors. She was building a timeline. Finally, she stopped. She spun the laptop back toward me. Her finger, tipped with a manicured red nail, tapped the screen hard. Here, she said. Look at this. I leaned in. She had highlighted a recurring monthly payment on my father's authorized user credit card, the one I paid off every month without looking at the details. Silverlark Strategies, I read. $3,650 a month. I frowned. I remember seeing that name. I thought it was a web hosting service or maybe a retainer for a publicist. Dad always talks about needing to manage his consulting brand, and Brielle has her website. $3,650 is not web hosting, Paige said dryly. And it is not a publicist, not a legitimate one. Anyway, she opened a new tab on the browser. She had already pulled up the background report on the company. Silverlark Strategies is a shell company operating out of a registered agent address in Delaware, Paige explained, but their operational footprint is digital. They are a reputation management firm. Specifically, they specialize in inorganic engagement amplification and crisis suppression. I do not follow, I said. They sell lies, Claire, Paige said bluntly. They sell bots. She clicked on a spreadsheet she had just generated from the data. Look at the dates of the payments. Every month, on the 15th. Now, look at Brielle's Instagram analytics from a third-party tracking site. She pulled up a graph. It showed Brielle's follower count and engagement rate. Every month, on the 16th or 17th, Brielle gets a sudden spike of 5,000 to 10,000 new followers. And look at the comments on her posts. The ones that say things like goals and so stunning and Queen of the South. Paige navigated to a folder of screenshots she had taken. She zoomed in on the user profiles leaving those comments. No profile pictures, Paige noted. Usernames with random strings of numbers, IP addresses originating from click farms in Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia. Claire, Brielle is not an influencer. She is a simulation. I felt a wave of nausea roll through me. I grabbed the edge of the table. For years, I had felt inferior to Brielle. I had looked at her numbers, her fan base, her seemingly effortless rise to local stardom, and I had felt like the ugly, uncharismatic sister who had to work in the dirt while Brielle floated on a cloud of adoration. My parents had used it against me. Why can't you be more like your sister? She has a brand. She has reach. It is fake, I asked, my voice hollow. All of it. 90% of it, Paige said. You have been paying nearly $4,000 a month to buy popularity for a sister who uses that popularity to call you a loser. You were funding the very weapon they used to beat you down. The irony was so sharp, it felt like a physical puncture wound. I had paid for the audience that laughed at me last night. But wait, Paige said, her eyes narrowing behind her glasses. It gets worse. Look at this line item from 3 months ago. The amount spikes. It goes from $3,650 to $12,000 for a single month. The billing code changes. She pointed to the description SLARK Crisis MGT, Retainer B. Crisis management, I repeated. You only pay that kind of premium when you need to scrub something from the internet. Paige said, when you need to bury a search result or flood the algorithm with positive noise to hide a negative story. What were they hiding? I asked. I do not know yet, Paige said, her fingers flying across the keyboard again. But I found a trace of a deleted thread on a local Charleston gossip forum. It was scrubbed fast. Silverlark is good at their job, but nothing is ever truly gone. She opened the Wayback Machine Internet Archive. She typed in the URL of the forum. She scrolled back to the date of the payment spike. There it was, a cached version of a post that had been deleted within 4 hours of going live. The headline read, "Local influencer caught in sponsorship scam boutique claims fraud." Paige read the text aloud. Anonymous sources claim that a certain blonde Southern belle accepted $5,000 in merchandise from a King Street jeweler for a guaranteed set of posts, then never posted, ghosted the owner, and was seen selling the items on Poshmark under a pseudonym. I gasped. Betrayal sold the jewelry. She did, Paige said. And when the jeweler threatened to sue and go to the press, Mommy and Daddy used your credit card to hire Silverlark to bury the story and likely pay off the jeweler to sign a non-disclosure agreement. That is what this $12,000 charge is. You paid for her settlement. I stood up. I had to walk away from the screen. I paced the length of the studio, my boots echoing on the concrete. It was not just that they were using me for money. It was that they had constructed an entire reality where I was the failure and they were the success. But the scaffolding of their success was built entirely out of my stolen labor. They made me feel small so I would keep giving. They kept Betrayal on a pedestal so I would feel obligated to support the star of the family. But the star was made of tin, and I was the one polishing it. I thought I was just helping with the bills, I said, my voice shaking. I thought I was keeping the family home safe. I thought I was investing in their happiness. Paige spun on her stool to face me. Her expression was no longer just professional. It was fierce. Claire, she said, her voice dropping to a register that vibrated with intensity. You need to stop using words like help and bills and family duty. You need to look at this for what it is. She gestured to the laptop, to the spreadsheets, to the evidence of the bot farms and the hush money and the lifestyle maintenance. This is not financial irresponsibility, Paige said. This is not a family living beyond their means. This is a deliberate, systematic extraction of resources from a targeted victim. They isolated you. They manipulated your reality. They created a dependency on your funds while destroying your self-esteem so you would never think you were strong enough to leave. She closed the file folder with a finality that sounded like a judge's gavel. This is not waste, she said, catching herself before correcting to English, the emotion slipping through. This is not waste. This is a racketeering structure. And you are the mark. I looked at the rows of flowers in the cooler behind her, thousands of blooms, waiting to be arranged. I had spent my life trying to create beauty, trying to make things grow, and all the while, I had been feeding a cancer. What do we do? I asked. How do we fight this? They are already spinning the story that I am the crazy one. They have the audience. They have the bots. Paige smiled. It was a terrifying, shark-like smile. Bots are expensive, Claire, she said, and you just cut off the funding. Silverlark does not work on credit. Within 48 hours, the bots will stop. The comments will dry up. The algorithm will notice the drop-off and tank her visibility. And when the jeweler realizes the settlement check might bounce, the silence will end. She tapped the evidence folder on the screen. We do not have to scream, Paige said. We just have to wait for the check to clear, or in this case, for it to bounce. But before that happens, we need to find out exactly how deep this goes. Because if they were willing to steal your inheritance and use your name for fraud, I guarantee you, this credit card is just the tip of the iceberg. She looked at me, her eyes hard. Are you ready to see what they really did with your name? I nodded. The cold in the room didn't bother me anymore. I felt numb, protected by the armor of absolute, undeniable truth. Show me, I said. Open every drawer. The silence in the studio had shifted. An hour ago, it was the silence of discovery, punctuated by the clicking of keys and the rustling of paper. Now, it was the heavy, suffocating silence of a bomb squad. realizing the red wire had already been cut, and the timer was speeding up. Paige was no longer sitting comfortably on the stool. She was leaning forward, her nose inches from the screen of her laptop, her body rigid. She had stopped narrating her findings. For the last 10 minutes, she had only made small, sharp noises of disbelief. "Claire," she said finally. Her voice was different. The sarcasm was gone. The "I told you so" tone was gone. In its place was a flat, deadly seriousness that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Come here, now." I walked around the table to stand behind her. The screen was filled with a PDF document, a loan agreement from a fintech company called Swift Capital. "What is that?" I asked. "This," Paige said, pointing to the header, "is a short-term business capital advance. It is a high-interest loan designed for businesses that need cash fast and do not care about the predatory rates." "I do not have any loans," I said immediately. "Lumen and Vine operates on cash flow. I have a line of credit with the local bank for emergencies, but I have never touched it. I certainly do not use online lenders." "According to this," Paige said, scrolling down to the bottom of the document, "you took out $50,000 last November. That is impossible," I said. "I would know if $50,000 hit my account." "It did hit your account," Paige said. She switched tabs to my business bank statement from November. "See deposit, Swift Capital funding, $50,000, November 12th. I stared at the line item. I remembered November. It was the height of the wedding season. I was doing 18-hour days. My bank feeds were a blur of incoming deposits from brides and outgoing payments to wholesalers. I must have missed it. "But look at the outflow," Paige said. She highlighted 3 transactions that happened within 24 hours of the deposit. Transfer to Diane Butler, transfer to Robert Butler, transfer to Studio B Productions, that is Betrayals LLC. "I did not authorize those," I whispered. My chest felt tight. "I know," Paige said. She went back to the loan document. "Look at the signature." It was an electronic signature. Claire Butler. It looked exactly like the one I used on my contracts. "Anyone can fake a digital signature," I said. "True," Paige said. "But look at the metadata. Every DocuSign envelope has a digital fingerprint. It records the IP address and the geolocation of the device used to sign it." She clicked on the certificate of completion attached to the loan. She zoomed in on the signer events section, signed by Claire Butler, IP address 192.168, location Isle of Palms, South Carolina. "I live in downtown Charleston," I said. "I never signed contracts from their house." "Do you remember where you were on November 10th? Paige asked. I thought back. "It was Dad's birthday. We had a dinner. I brought my laptop because I had to finish a mood board for a client." "And did you leave the room?" "Yes," I said, the memory crystallizing like ice. Brielle spilled red wine on the carpet. Mom made a huge scene. We all ran to get club soda and towels. I left my laptop open on the dining room table. "That was all they needed," Paige said grimly. 5 minutes. They opened your browser, applied for the loan using your pre-saved business data, which they have because Mom has your tax returns, and signed it while you were scrubbing Merlot out of a rug. "They took a loan in my name," I said, the reality crashing down on me. "Using my company's credit, and they transferred the money to themselves." "It gets worse," Paige said. She opened another file. "Because they did not just steal the money, they rewrote history." She pulled up an email thread she had found in my mother's sent folder, the access to which I had unwittingly provided when I gave Paige my old laptop years ago, which apparently still had my mother's login cached. The email was to their personal accountant. The subject line was tax documentation regarding Claire. I read the body of the email. "Hi, Steve. Attached are the details for the $50,000 influx. As discussed, Claire was in a bad spot with her business again. We agreed to take this loan under her company name to help her build credit, but the funds were immediately transferred to us to repay the personal loans we have given her over the years for her studio equipment. Please mark this as repayment of family debt. So we do not get hit with gift tax." My knees gave out. I had to grab the back of Paige's chair to keep from falling. They claimed I owed them, I choked out. They stole my credit, took the cash, and then told the IRS that I was paying them back for money they never gave me. It is the perfect crime, Paige said, her voice dripping with disgust. If you ever found out and tried to sue, they have a paper trail created by them stating that you owed them money. They turn the victim into the debtor. Why? I asked. Why go to such lengths? Why not just ask me for the money? Because you might have said no to $50,000, Paige said, and because owning you is part of the point. Look at this. She opened a folder she had labeled Betrayal, said expenses. You remember all those props you bought for Betrayal? Paige asked. The vintage mirrors, the velvet sofas, the lighting kits. You paid for them directly from your business account, thinking you were being a supportive sister. Yes, I said. Thousands of dollars of inventory. Well, Paige said, pulling up a spreadsheet she had extracted from Brielle's cloud drive. Brielle lists those items on her own asset sheet. She claims she bought them, and here's the kicker: she lists the money you spent on them as consulting fees paid to you. But she never paid you. She just created a ledger that says she did. I do not understand, I said. If the IRS ever audits Brielle, Paige explained, she can show these expenses to lower her tax bill. She claims she paid you for the props, but since no money actually changed hands, she is effectively laundering her tax liability through your company. If they audit you, they will ask why you did not declare that income. You go to jail for tax evasion. She walks away with a clerical error. I felt sick. Physically, violently sick. I had thought I was dealing with greedy, selfish people. I was not. I was dealing with financial predators who had turned their own daughter into a shell company. There is more, Paige said. She did not give me time to process. She knew we had to get to the bottom of the rot. I checked the deed to the house on Isle of Palms. The house I pay to maintain, I said bitterly. The house you pay for, Paige corrected. Look at this email from Diane to their estate attorney, dated 6 months ago. The email was short and brutal. John, we need to expedite the transfer of the deed into the irrevocable trust for Brielle. We are concerned about Claire's stability. She is becoming increasingly erratic, and we worry she might try to claim equity in the house given the small contributions she has made over the years. We need to ensure the asset is protected for Brielle, who is actually building a future. Claire is, unfortunately, a long-term financial burden we have to manage. A burden, I repeated. I pay their mortgage. I pay their electric bill. I pay for the roof over their heads. And I am the burden. They have to believe that, Paige said softly. To justify what they are doing, they have to dehumanize you. If you are a capable, successful woman, then they are thieves. But if you are a burden, a mess, an erratic child, then they are just managing you. They are taking control of your assets for your own good. It is how they sleep at night. And the money from Nana Rose? I asked. The inheritance. Gone, Paige said, but not lost. I traced the wire transfers from 16 years ago. It went to a company called Crown and Sash Consulting. Pageant coaches, I said. I knew it. Not just coaching, Paige said. It was a buy-in. That money bought Brielle her first title. It was a sponsorship fee that guaranteed her a spot in the top 5 of the Miss Junior South Carolina pageant. They used your education fund to bribe a judge panel so Brielle could wear a rhinestone crown for a year. I closed my eyes. My college degree, my start in New York, my early years of struggle, all of it could have been different. I had eaten ramen noodles in a cold apartment in Brooklyn while my sister was buying trophies with my money. But here's the thing that scares me the most, Paige said. She clicked on one final document. It was the invoice from Silverlark Strategies, the one with the crisis management code. I dug deeper into the Silverlark contract, Paige said. The crisis they are managing, it is not just the jewelry theft. It is an FTC investigation. The Federal Trade Commission, I asked. Brielle promoted a skincare line 6 months ago, Paige said. She claimed she used it for a month, and it cleared her acne. The company is now being investigated for false advertising Because the after photos were photoshopped. And guess who produced the photos? Betrayal did, I said. Technically, Paige said. But look at the contract for the brand deal. She pulled it up. Vendor Lumen and Vine Studio. Contact Claire Butler. No, I gasped. I never worked with that skincare brand. They used your letterhead, Paige said. They invoiced the brand through a PayPal account linked to your email, the one Diane controls, but the money was routed to Betrayal. Betrayal told the brand that Lumen and Vine produced the content. If the FTC finds anyone for deceptive marketing, they are not coming for Betrayal. She is just the talent. They are coming for the production company that falsified the images. They are coming for you. I looked at the screen, my logo, my address, my name, all over a contract for a fraudulent ad campaign I had never seen. If this blows up, Paige said, looking me in the eye, you are not just looking at a ruined credit score. You are looking at federal fines. You are looking at being the fall guy for a fraud scheme that spans years. I sank onto the floor. The cold concrete seeped through my jeans. I had been worrying about being uninvited to a party. I had been worrying about hurt feelings. Meanwhile, my parents and sister had been systematically weaving a net around me, weighing it down with their crimes, so that when the ship finally sank, I would be the one chained to the anchor. They were not just using me as a battery, they were using me as a shield. I was their insurance policy against jail time. Claire, Paige said. She got off the stool and crouched down in front of me. Listen to me. This is not the time to break down. This is the time to get angry. Real anger. Not the kind that makes you cry, but the kind that makes you methodic. She handed me a bottle of water. We have to stop them, she said. Not just the money. We have to stop them from using your name. Right now. Today. Because every minute they are out there, they could be signing another contract or taking another loan. I took the water. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. I thought about the burden email. I thought about the freeloader live stream. I thought about the $50,000 loan taken while I was cleaning up their red wine stain. They had bet everything on the idea that I was weak. They had bet that I loved them too much to ever look at the paperwork. They had bet that I would accept the role of the messy daughter because I craved their approval. They had bet wrong. I stood up. I walked over to the printer. What are you doing? Paige asked. I'm not going to call them, I said. I am not going to text them. I am done playing their game. I grabbed a ream of paper and loaded the tray. We are going to file a police report for identity theft, I said. Then we are going to the bank to freeze the EIN. Then we are going to send a cease and desist letter to Silverlark. And then, I looked at the stack of evidence on the screen, the loans, the fake invoices, the stolen inheritance. And then I am going to prepare a binder, I said. And when they come here to scream at me for cutting off the money, I am not going to offer them a tissue. I am going to offer them a choice sign, a confession. Or I hand this binder to the district attorney. Paige smiled. It was the first time she looked genuinely proud since she walked in. That is my girl, she said. Let's get to work. I looked at the clock. It was mid-afternoon. The shadows were getting long, but inside the studio, under the harsh glare of the monitor, everything was finally brutally clear. I was not their daughter anymore. I was the prosecution. The whiteboard in my studio was usually reserved for sketching floral arches or mapping out table arrangements for gala dinners. It was a canvas for beauty, but by 4 o'clock that afternoon, it had become a war room map. Paige and I had spent the last 2 hours translating the digital chaos into a physical timeline. We used red markers for my bank withdrawals and blue markers for Betrayal's career milestones. The visual result was not just damning, it was mathematically irrefutable. Look at this, I said, capping the red marker. I pointed to a date 3 years ago. March 10th, Dad called me in a panic saying the HVAC system at the beach house had completely failed, and they needed $7,000 immediately for a replacement unit, or the pipes would burst from the humidity. I drew a line across the board to the blue column. March 12th, Paige read from her laptop screen, where she had Betrayal's archived Instagram feed open. Brielle posts a photo geotagged in Tulum, Mexico, caption, spontaneous wellness retreat, sometimes you just have to fly away. The resort she stayed at, I said, checking the credit card statement from the folder we had compiled. Costs $1,200 a night, and look at the flight charges, business class. So the HVAC never broke, Paige said. Or it did, and they used a space heater while they spent my money on margaritas and Mayan clay wraps. I said. We went down the line. The emergency dental surgery for my mother coincided with a shopping spree at Saks Fifth Avenue that Brielle unboxed on TikTok. The unexpected tax bill from the county assessor matched the exact cost of the entry fees and travel expenses for a pageant in Atlanta that Brielle claimed she had been invited to as a VIP guest for 5 years. Every single crisis my parents had presented to me was a lie. They were not victims of bad luck. They were financing a luxury lifestyle and a failing influencer career by manufacturing emergencies to exploit my empathy. I stepped back from the board. The anger that had been simmering all day had crystallized into something cold and hard. It felt like steel. I am done analyzing, I said. I want to lock the doors. I sat down at my computer. I did not just log out this time. I went to the source. I pulled up the websites for the 3 major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. One by one, I initiated a total credit freeze. Do you want to prevent all access to your credit file? The screen asked. This will prevent new loans, credit cards, and mortgages from being opened in your name. Yes, I said out loud, clicking the mouse with a satisfying snap. I set up a fraud alert. I added a note to my file requiring a personal phone call to my cell number for any credit inquiry, no matter how small. Then came the digital eviction. I went into the back end of my Google account, my Apple ID, and my domain registrar. I removed every trace of my mother. I changed my recovery email to a brand new, encrypted email address I had created 5 minutes ago, one that Paige had the password to. Not Diane. I changed my security questions. What is your mother's maiden name? I changed the question. What is the name of your first pet? Answer Wolf. I was severing the digital umbilical cord. It felt violent, in a way. I was erasing the pathways they had used to walk freely in and out of my life. But as I watched the confirmation screens pop up, update successful, security enhanced, I felt lighter. They are going to hit a wall, Paige said, watching me. The next time they try to log in to check if you have money or try to sign a document, they are going to get an access denied message. That is when they will panic. Let them panic, I said. Paige pulled out her phone. It is time to bring in the heavy artillery. You need representation. Claire, real representation, not the family lawyer your father plays golf with. She dialed a number and put it on speaker. David Thorne, a man answered. His voice was deep, gravelly, and sounded expensive. David, it is Paige Donovan, my aunt said. I am sitting here with my niece. We have a situation involving identity theft, fraud, misappropriation of funds, and potentially an FTC violation involving falsified advertising contracts. The perpetrators are immediate family. There was a pause on the line. Then, David spoke. The messy kind. I assume there are substantial assets involved. We are building the ledger now, Paige said, but we are looking at 6 figures, and we need to secure a business from hostile intrusion. I can be there in 45 minutes, David said. Do not speak to them until I arrive. If they call, let it go to voicemail. If they show up, keep the door locked. I am bringing the cease and desist templates. The call ended. David Thorne, I asked. He specializes in high-conflict asset recovery, Paige said. He usually handles divorces for billionaires. He eats bullies for breakfast. While we waited for David, I turned my attention to the narrative war. I knew my family. Right now, they were scrambling. Brielle was likely deleting comments. My mother was probably crafting a sob story for her friends. They would try to erase the evidence of their cruelty. I needed to preserve it. I opened a screen recording software. I went to the archive of the live stream Paige had saved. I played it back. I watched my mother raise that glass. Thank God Claire isn't here to ruin the aesthetic. I saved the clip as a standalone file. I went to my voicemail. I downloaded the audio file of my father telling me I was embarrassing the family. I went to Brielle's Instagram. I screenshotted the toxic family story. I screenshotted the comments from her friends bashing me. I screenshotted the fake comments from the bots that Silverlark had deployed. I created a folder named Character Witness. If they ever tried to paint me as the unstable one in court, I would play these recordings. I would let a judge hear the disdain in their voices. I would let the world see the bullying. Then, I opened a spreadsheet. The Grand Ledger, I murmured. I started typing. I went back 5 years. Monthly housing maintenance, $234,000. Authorized user credit card payments, $112,000. Direct loans, stolen $50,000. Inheritance, misappropriation, $50,000. Brielle's set design expenses, $45,000. Silverlark reputation management fees, $28,000. I added the interest I had paid on the credit cards. I added the penalties. I stared at the total sum at the bottom of the column, $519,000, over $500,000. I sat back in my chair, the breath leaving my body in a long, slow exhale. That was my retirement. That was the down payment on my own home. That was the expansion of my studio into a second location. They had not just taken my money, they had eaten 5 years of my future. They had consumed my labor, my sweat, and my stress, and turned it into facials and fake internet popularity. It is a lot, Paige said softly, standing behind me. It is a house, I said. I bought them a house, and they would not even let me into the party. The rolling door buzzer sounded. I flinched. Check the camera, Paige said. I looked at the security monitor. It was a tall man with silver hair and a briefcase. David Thorne. I buzzed him in. He walked in with the confidence of a man who knew the law was a weapon he knew how to wield. He shook my hand firmly. Claire, he said. Paige gave me the overview. Let's see the lease. I handed him the commercial lease agreement for the studio. He scanned it quickly. Standard commercial lease, he said. You are the sole lessee. Lumen and Vine LLC is the entity. Are your parents listed as officers or members of the LLC? No, I said. I own 100% of the equity. Good, David said. Then this is simple. This studio is private property. If they enter without your permission, it is criminal trespass. It does not matter that they are your parents. The law does not have a family discount for breaking and entering. He pulled a document from his briefcase. I have drafted a notice of no trespass, he said. We will serve this to them. But first, we need to handle the confrontation that is inevitable. They are going to come here, I said. When they realize the money is truly gone, they will come here to intimidate me. They always do. They think if they scream loud enough, I will crumble. That is exactly what we want, Paige said. I looked at her. We want them to scream. We want them to admit it, Paige said. Right now, all we have is a paper trail. It is strong, but a jury might get confused by the accounting. We need a confession. We need them to say, out loud, that the money was for Brielle. We need them to admit they took the loan. We need them to admit the bots. How do we get them to do that? I asked. We invite them in, David said, a small smile playing on his lips. We make them think they are coming to negotiate a surrender. We make them think you are scared. If they think I am weak, I said, catching on, they will get arrogant, and when they are arrogant, they talk. Exactly, Paige said. They think you are the same Claire they have bullied for a decade. They do not know you have a forensic accountant and a shark lawyer sitting in the wings. I looked at the phone on the desk. I have to invite them, I said. Send a text, David advised. Keep it brief. Keep it vague. Make it sound like you are wavering. I picked up the phone. My thumb hovered over the group chat titled, Butler Family. I typed, I cannot keep doing this. The bank is calling me about the loan. We need to talk. I am at the studio. It was the perfect bait. I cannot keep doing this sounded like a breakdown. The bank is calling sounded like fear. We need to talk sounded like I was ready to fold. I pressed send. Now, David said. We stage the room. He pointed to the corner of the studio where a large floral cooler hummed. I will be back there. I will be able to hear everything. Paige, you should be visible. You are the catalyst. Oh, I will be right here, Paige said, sitting back down at the table and crossing her legs. I wouldn't miss this for the world. And you, David said, looking at me. You sit at the head of the table. You have the ledger in front of you. You do not shout. You do not cry. You ask questions. You let them fill the silence with their guilt. I looked around my studio. For years, I had felt like a guest in my own life, scurrying around to please them. But as I looked at the concrete walls, the steel beams, the buckets of flowers I had bought with my own money, I realized something. This was not their house. This was my factory. This was where I made things. I walked over to the main light switch. I killed the overhead fluorescents, leaving only the work lights over the table and the soft, dramatic uplighting I used for client presentations. The studio transformed. It looked serious. It looked like an interrogation room disguised as a design firm. I placed the grand ledger in the center of the table. I placed the evidence folder next to it. I sat down in my chair, the ergonomic leather chair I had bought for myself last Christmas. I placed my hands on the armrests. I was not shaking. I was not afraid. They are coming, I said, seeing the notification on my phone. On our way. You better have a good explanation. Let them come, Paige said. I looked at the door. I was ready. I was not the daughter who waited for scraps of affection anymore. I was the CEO of a company that had just identified a massive embezzlement scheme, and I was about to conduct the exit interview. The sun had set outside. The studio was a pool of shadows and focused light. It was my territory, and for the first time in my life, I controlled the gravity in the room. The headlights of my father's Range Rover swept across the frosted glass of the studio windows, cutting through the carefully curated lighting I had set inside. I heard the engine cut, followed by the heavy slam of car doors. 1, 2, 3, they were here. I sat at the head of the long steel work table, my hands resting flat on the cool metal. To my right, Aunt Paige sat calmly, leafing through a magazine she had pulled from her bag, looking for all the world like a bored client waiting for an appointment. In the back, hidden behind the wall of the walk-in floral cooler, I knew David Thorne was listening, his pen likely poised over a legal pad, ready to transcribe every threat, every admission, and every lie. The keypad on the exterior door beeped. A red light flashed. They tried the code, the old code. Beep, 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 error. I watched the security monitor. My father, Robert, frowned, punching the numbers again with more force, as if physical aggression could override the digital lock. When it denied him a second time, he hammered his fist against the metal frame. "Open this door," he shouted, his voice muffled by the industrial insulation but still audible. I nodded to Marcus, my studio manager, who was standing by the loading dock entrance. He looked terrified, but he knew the plan. He walked over and undid the deadbolt, sliding the heavy rolling door up just enough for them to duck under. They did not duck. They waited until Marcus raised it fully, and then they marched in. Robert led the charge. He was wearing his golf polo and a navy blazer. His face flushed a mottled red that clashed with his silver hair. He looked like a general who had just been told his troops had mutinied. Behind him came Diane, my mother. She was wearing oversized sunglasses, even though it was night, and clutching her handbag to her chest like a shield. Her lips were pressed into a thin, white line, and trailing in the rear was Betrayal. She did not look like someone in a crisis. She looked like she was walking a red carpet. She wore a matching beige athleisure set, her hair perfectly waved, her phone in her hand, the camera lens pointed at the floor. But recording audio, always recording. They stopped 10 feet from the table. They did not look at the flowers. They did not look at the high ceilings or the industrial beauty of the space I had built. They looked only at me, Robert did not say hello. He marched up to the table and slammed a crumpled piece of paper down on the metal surface. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the cavernous room. "The catering contractor," Robert barked, his voice booming. "He is threatening to sue. He says the check bounced. He says he is going to put a lien on the house. You are going to write a new check. Right now. Tonight." He pulled a pen from his pocket and threw it toward me. It skidded across the metal and stopped inches from my hand. "And you are going to call the bank," he continued, leaning over the table, his knuckles white. "You are going to tell them there was a mistake with the authorized user cards. You are going to tell them to reinstate the limits immediately. I had to pay for dinner with my debit card. Claire, do you know how risky that is?" I looked at the pen, then I looked at him. I did not pick it up. "Hello, Dad," I said. My voice was quiet, steady, and completely devoid of the daughterly deference he was used to. "Hello, Mom, Brielle." "Cut the attitude," Brielle snapped. Stepping out from behind Diane, she rolled her eyes, a gesture so practiced it looked like a tic. "God, you are so dramatic. You cut off the cards just to get attention. It is pathetic. Claire, I have a campaign launching on Monday. I cannot have my card declining when I need to boost posts." She looked around the studio with a sneer, wrinkling her nose as if the scent of fresh gardenias was offensive. "Look at this place," she said, gesturing vaguely. "It is freezing in here, and you are sitting there like you are the CEO of Apple. Claire, you play with flowers. You arrange centerpieces for people who actually have money. Stop acting like you have power. Just pay the bills and stop ruining everyone's weekend." "Playing with flowers," I repeated slowly. "Yes," Brielle said, crossing her arms. "It is a hobby that got out of hand, and we support it. We let you have this warehouse, but do not forget who the real brand is in this family." I stood up. The scrape of my chair against the concrete was loud. "Get out," I said. The three of them froze. I had never kicked them out of anywhere. I had never even asked them to leave my apartment when they overstayed their welcome. "Excuse me," Diane said, lowering her sunglasses to peer at me. Her eyes were wide, feigning shock. "This is a place of business," I said, my voice hardening into steel. "This is Lumen and Vine Studio. It is a limited liability company registered solely in my name. You are not clients. You are not employees. And you are certainly not investors. You are trespassing. Get out." Diane let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. She stepped forward, switching instantly from shock to the disappointed mother routine that had worked on me for 34 years. "Claire, baby," she cooed, though the tone was laced with poison. "You are tired. I know you work hard. We appreciate that. But you are being irrational. You are letting this jealousy consume you. We are family. You do not talk to family like this. Think about your reputation. If people knew you were treating your parents like this, treating your sister like this, after all we have done for you." "After all you have done for me," I said. "We gave you life," Robert interjected. "We gave you a name that opens doors in this town. A name you are currently using to commit fraud," I said. The word hung in the air. Fraud. Robert's face went purple. "Watch your mouth, young lady." I did not watch my mouth. I reached for the black binder sitting in the center of the table, the grand ledger. I flipped it open. "Let's talk about what you have done for me," I said. I looked down at the page. "Or rather, what I have done for you." I ran my finger down the first column. "January 12th, I read aloud. "Emergency repair for the beach house roof, $5,000. You told me the rain was coming into the master bedroom." I looked up at Diane. "January 14th, I continued. "Brielle posts a haul video from Chanel, 2 handbags, total retail value, $4,800. The receipt timestamp matches the withdrawal from the roof repair fund." Diane flinched. She looked at Brielle, then back at me. That is a coincidence," Diane stammered. "The roof cost less than we thought. We used the difference to treat Brielle. She was having a hard month." April 2nd, I read, ignoring her. Medical emergency. Dad needs an MRI for his back. Out-of-pocket cost $2,500. I turned the page. April 4th, country club statement. New set of Callaway irons and a dinner for 4 at the grill room. Total cost $2,450. My back hurt, Robert shouted. I needed those clubs for my swing. It is therapeutic. August 15th, I said, my voice rising slightly, cutting over him. Tuition assistance for Brielle's marketing course, $3,000. I looked at Brielle. August 16th, a weekend rental of a yacht in Miami for a photo shoot, cost $3,000. I needed content, Brielle screamed. That is marketing. Claire. You are so stupid you do not even understand how the industry works. I have to look successful to be successful. You are not successful, I said calmly. You are subsidized. I slammed the binder shut. $234,000 in 5 years, I said. That is just the maintenance. That does not include the credit cards. That does not include the loans you took without asking. The room went silent. The number was too big to ignore. It was $250,000. It was a house. It was a life. Diane's face had lost its color. She looked at the binder as if it were a radioactive object. Claire, she whispered, her voice trembling. We can explain. We intended to pay you back. It is all kept track of. Oh, I know it is kept track of, I said. I have your emails to your accountant, the ones where you call me a burden, the ones where you claim my money is a repayment for loans you never gave me. Diane gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. She knew exactly which email I was talking about. Brielle, realizing the tide was turning, decided to go on the offensive. She lunged forward. Give me that, she shrieked, reaching for the binder. You are lying. You made those numbers up. She grabbed the edge of the binder. I did not let go, but I did not have to fight her. I took a step back, pulling the binder with me. Marcus, I said loudly, lock the door. Behind them, the heavy rolling door rattled down. The deadbolt slid home with a loud clack. Brielle froze. She looked at the closed door, then back at me. Her eyes were wide with genuine fear. You cannot lock us in here, Robert growled, stepping toward me. That is false imprisonment. I will have you arrested. You are free to leave whenever you want, I said, through the side exit, after the police arrive, or you can listen to what my associate has to say. I nodded to Paige. Until this moment, they had barely acknowledged her presence. She was just the aunt they ignored, the background noise, but now. Paige stood up. She did not look like the background anymore. She looked like the executioner. She picked up a single piece of paper from her stack. Hello, Diane, Robert, Paige said coolly. Paige, Diane hissed. Stay out of this. This is family business. You have always been jealous that you do not have children of your own to worry about. Oh, I am very worried about your children, Paige said. Specifically, I am worried about the one you are turning into a felon. Paige slid the paper across the table toward Brielle. Do you recognize this invoice? Brielle? Paige asked. Brielle looked down. It was the invoice from Silverlark Strategies, the one for the crisis management package. I do not know what that is, Brielle stammered. It is an invoice for $12,000, Paige said, paid for by Claire's credit card. To hush up a jeweler in Charleston who was about to file a police report because you stole a diamond tennis bracelet. Robert went rigid. He looked at Brielle. You told us it was a misunderstanding. You told us they lost the inventory. She lied, Bob, Paige said. Just like she lies about her followers. Just like she lies about her income. Paige dropped another document on the table. This is a loan application to Swift Capital, Paige said. $50,000, signed by Claire Butler. She pointed to the signature line. But Claire was not there, Paige said. The IP address is your house. The device ID matches your iPad. Robert opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at the document, then at me. He looked smaller suddenly. The bluster was gone. The golf club patriarch facade was crumbling. revealing the desperate, small thief underneath. "That is a misunderstanding," Robert croaked. "We were managing Claire's assets. We needed liquidity." "It was a bridge loan." "It is bank fraud," Paige said. "It is identity theft, and it carries a sentence of up to 30 years in federal prison." Brielle let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She collapsed into one of the guest chairs, burying her face in her hands. "I did not know," she wailed. "Daddy said it was okay. Daddy said Claire had plenty of money and she wouldn't mind. I just needed the clothes for the shoot. I cannot go to jail. I have a brand." "You do not have a brand," I said, my voice cutting through her hysterics. "You have a bot farm, and I have the receipts for that too." I walked around the table until I was standing right in front of my mother. Diane was shaking. She looked at me, her eyes searching for the compliant, soft daughter she had manipulated for decades. She was looking for a way in. "Claire," she pleaded, reaching out a hand to touch my arm. "Please, think about what you are doing. If this gets out the scandal, it will ruin us. It will ruin your sister. You cannot do this to your own blood." I pulled my arm back. I did not let her touch me. "You ruined the family when you decided to treat me like an ATM instead of a daughter," I said. I looked at Robert, who was staring at the loan document, his face gray. "You called me a freeloader," I said. "You stood in front of 50 people and toasted to my absence because I ruined your aesthetic. You called me a parasite." I pointed to the binder. "I paid for the aesthetic. Dad, I paid for the champagne. I paid for the lights. I paid for the roof. I paid for the lies." "We are sorry," Robert whispered. It was the first time I had ever heard him say those words. But it was not an apology. It was a negotiation. "We can work this out. We can set up a payment plan. Just do not call the authorities. Please, Claire." "A payment plan?" I laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. "You have no income. You have no assets. The house is mortgaged to the hilt. I checked the public records this afternoon. You are broke. Robert, you have been broke for 10 years. You have been living on my credit." Brielle looked up, her mascara running down her face in dark streaks. "What do you mean? Broke? We are not broke. We have the house. We have the club membership." "Paid for by Claire," Paige said. "All of it. If she stops paying today, you are on the street in 90 days. Brielle looked at her parents with horror. The illusion was shattering. She wasn't a princess. She was a pauper in stolen silk. "So here is how this is going to work," I said. I leaned against the table, looking down at them. "I am not going to call the police tonight," I said. Visible relief washed over Robert's face. He straightened up, thinking he had won, thinking I had folded. "Thank you, Claire," he said, exhaling. "I knew you were reasonable. I knew you wouldn't." "I am not done," I interrupted. "I am not calling the police tonight, but I am cutting the cord. Tonight," I held up 3 fingers. 1, you will sign a document acknowledging the debt, all of it, $519,000. 2, you will vacate the Isle of Palms house. You cannot afford it. Sell it. Pay me back what you can from the equity, if there is any left. 3, you will never, ever use my name, my company, or my image again. If I see one more unauthorized charge, one more fake contract, one more lie." I nodded toward the back of the room. "My attorney has been listening to this entire conversation," I said, "and he has the police on speed dial." Robert's eyes darted to the shadows in the back of the room. He realized then that this was not a family squabble. It was a deposition. "You trapped us," Diane whispered. "You set us up." "I did not set you up," I said. "I just turned on the lights." I walked over to the rolling door. I hit the button. The motor whirred, and the door began to rise, revealing the cool night air of Charleston. "Go," I said. They stood there for a moment, stunned, stripped of their pretenses. They looked like strangers. They looked small. Robert gathered his dignity, or what was left of it, and turned to leave. He did not look at me. Diane followed him. clutching her purse, her sunglasses back on to hide her eyes. Brielle was the last to go. She stood up, wiping her face. She looked at me with a mixture of hatred and fear. "You think you won," she spat. "But you are going to be all alone." "I have been alone for years," I said. "At least now, it is free." She stormed out, her heels clicking on the concrete, chasing after the parents who had lied to her just as much as they had lied to me. I watched the Range Rover taillights fade into the darkness. I turned back to the room. Paige was smiling, from the shadows of the cooler. David Thorne stepped out, closing his notebook. "That," David said, "was a masterclass in leverage." I looked at the empty studio. It was quiet again, but it wasn't the silence of abandonment. It was the silence of a clean slate. "I am not destroying the family," I said to the empty air where they had stood. "I am just stopping the funding for a performance." I looked at the binder on the table. "Now," I said to Paige, "let's draft the settlement." The silence that followed the confrontation in the studio was not peaceful. It was the heavy, pressurized silence of a receding tide before a tsunami. For the first 48 hours, the only thing that happened was a digital massacre. I sat at my desk, monitoring the analytics Paige had set up. We had cut the wire to Silverlark Strategies at exactly 9 o'clock on Monday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, the artificial life support system that had kept Brielle's career alive began to fail. It started slowly. A few hundred followers dropped off as the subscription expired. Then, the algorithm, sensing the sudden lack of incoming engagement packets, punished her. I watched the numbers on the screen. It was fascinating and horrifying. On Sunday, Brielle had posted a photo of her brunch outfit. Within 2 hours, it had received 4,000 likes and 300 comments. On Wednesday, she posted a frantic, heavily edited photo of herself holding a basket of apples, captioned "Orchard Vibes with the fam a lie," since she was currently hiding in her room. 6 hours passed, likes 212, comments 14, and the comments were no longer the gushing, emoji-filled praises of Queen and Slay generated by the bots. They were real people. "Is this from last year? I thought you were in Charleston. Where is the link for the dress? You didn't tag it. Why is your engagement so low? Did you get shadow banned?" The facade was cracking. The brands that I had helped her court, the local boutiques, the skincare startup, the sparkling water company, were noticing. My email, which was still listed as the administrative contact on her media kit because she was too lazy to change it, pinged with a notification. It was from the marketing director of Coastal Glow Skincare. "Hi, Claire. Hope you are well. We are reviewing the metrics for the upcoming campaign launch. We noticed a significant irregularity in Brielle's reach over the last 3 days. Her story views are down 80%. Is there a technical issue? We need to hit 10,000 impressions to justify the retainer." I did not reply. I forwarded the email to the folder labeled Evidence. Then, the counterattack began. They realized they could not win on the numbers. The math was against them. So they decided to burn the calculator. I was in the middle of a consultation with a bride named Jessica, discussing peony arrangements for a May wedding, when my phone lit up with a notification from Instagram. "Brielle Butler mentioned you in a post." I apologized to Jessica, turned the phone over, and ignored it. But 5 minutes later, it buzzed again, and again. Texts began to pour in from friends I had not spoken to in months. "Claire, are you okay? Just saw Brielle's post. That is intense. Call me." I finished the consultation with a smile that felt like it was stapled to my face. As soon as Jessica left the studio, I opened the app. Brielle had gone nuclear. She had posted a long, text-heavy carousel. The background was a somber gray. The title slide read, "The Betrayal of Sisterhood." I have stayed silent for too long. The caption began, "People think my life is perfect, but they do not see the darkness behind the scenes." For years, I have been bullied and financially manipulated by a family member who claims to support women but actually tears them down. My sister, Claire, has decided to sabotage my career because of her own deep-seated jealousy. She has cut off my access to my own business resources, locked me out of accounts, and is trying to leave our parents destitute just to prove a point. It hurts when the toxic person is your own blood. Survivor toxic. Family jealousy. I read it twice. The projection was so absolute it was almost a work of art. She was accusing me of the exact financial abuse they had inflicted on me. She is playing the victim card, Paige said, reading over my shoulder. It is the only card she has left in the deck. People are believing her, I said, scrolling through the comments. Stay strong. Babe jealousy is a disease. Cut her off. You don't need that energy. Family can be the worst. Sending prayers. Let them comment, Paige said. Comments do not pay the mortgage, but this. She pointed to a new text on my phone. This is more dangerous. It was a screenshot sent by my cousin Mike. It was from a private Facebook group called Butler Family Updates, a group I had been removed from 3 days ago. Diane had posted a long, rambling message. Prayer warriors, we need you. Our hearts are broken. As many of you know, we have tried to help Claire get her studio off the ground for years. We have poured our savings into her dreams. Unfortunately, Claire has fallen into some bad habits. We suspect a gambling issue, or perhaps a man who is influencing her, and she has turned on us. She is claiming we owe her money when in reality, we are the ones who are drained. She has threatened to sue us if we do not give her more cash. Please pray for her soul, and please, do not engage with her if she reaches out for money. I felt the blood drain from my face. A gambling issue, I whispered. She is telling the entire extended family I am a gambling addict. She has to explain where the money went, Paige said grimly. She cannot admit they spent it, so she has to invent a black hole that swallowed it. You are the black hole. This was not just mean. This was defamation. This was an attempt to isolate me so completely that I would have no support system left. This is good, Paige said, surprisingly. Good? I looked at her like she was crazy. She is destroying my reputation. She is digging a grave, Paige corrected. This is libel. Written, demonstrable, malicious libel, and Mike just sent us the time-stamped proof. She saved the screenshot. But we need to watch your flank, Paige added. If they are attacking your character personally, they will attack your business professionally. She was right. That afternoon, the phone at the studio rang. Marcus answered it. I watched his face go pale. He hung up and looked at me. That was a bride's mother, Marcus said. She said she received an anonymous email this morning claiming that Lumen and Vine is under investigation for fraud and that we are on the verge of bankruptcy. She wants to pull her deposit. Who sent the email? I asked. It came from a burner address, Marcus said. watchdogcharleston@gmail.com. I slammed my hand on the desk. This was war. They were trying to starve me out. They knew that if my business failed, I would lose the leverage of my income. David, I yelled toward the back office where our lawyer had set up a temporary command post. We have tortious interference. David Thorne emerged, looking calm as ever. Send me the email header. We will trace the IP. If it matches the Isle of Palms house, we add another count to the lawsuit. I cannot lose clients. David, I said, my voice shaking with rage. I have spent 10 years building this reputation. Draft a statement, David said. Keep it professional. Lumen and Vine is the target of a malicious harassment campaign. We are currently working with legal counsel and law enforcement to identify the perpetrators. Our financials are solid, and our operations are unaffected. Send it to your current client list before they get the poison email. I spent the next hour doing damage control, calling brides, reassuring event planners. I had to smile. I had to sound confident. Inside, I was screaming. But while they were busy trying to burn down my house, they forgot they were standing in a house made of gasoline. At 4 o'clock, Brielle made a fatal mistake, desperate to reverse the plummeting metrics on her account, and unable to afford the premium Silverlark service I had canceled. She tried to cut corners. Paige called me over to her screen. Look at this, she said. Brielle's follower count had suddenly jumped by 5,000 in the last 10 minutes. Did she find money? I asked. No, Paige said. She found a discount bin. She used a cheap, automated bot service, the kind that charges $50 for 5,000 followers. But these aren't the sophisticated, slow-drip bots Silverlark uses. These are zombie accounts, no profile pictures, names like User789, all created today. So, Instagram's security algorithms are smarter than Betrayal, Paige said. We watched in real time. 1 minute, the follower count was up. The next minute, the number didn't just drop, it vanished. The screen refreshed. User not found. What happened? I asked. She triggered a fraud flag, Paige said, grinning. Instagram detected a massive influx of inauthentic activity and suspended her account pending review. She is off the grid. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Betrayal. What did you do? I didn't answer. I didn't have to do anything. She had done it to herself. 10 minutes later, another email came in. This time, it was from the brand manager of Velvet Moss, a high-end clothing line that was Betrayal's biggest sponsor, Claire. We are trying to tag Betrayal in a launch post and her account is gone. Also, we have received some concerning information regarding the legitimacy of her previous engagement numbers. Since your studio is listed as the production partner, can you please provide the raw analytics for the last quarter? If we suspect ad fraud, we will be forced to terminate the contract and seek damages. I looked at the email. Seek damages. I typed a reply. I did not cover for her. I did not lie. Dear Sarah, effective immediately. Lumen and Vine Studio has terminated all professional association with Betrayal Butler due to breach of contract and ethical violations. We are not responsible for her account management or her metrics. Please direct all future inquiries to her directly. Sincerely, Claire. I hit send. The bridge was burned. At 6 o'clock, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the studio floor. The day had been a brutal slog of defense and counter moves. Then, the heavy rolling door rattled. I checked the monitor. It wasn't the police. It wasn't Betrayal. It was my father. He was alone. Do not let him in, Paige said. No, I said. Let him in. He looks broken. He did not look like the man who had slammed the table 2 nights ago. His shoulders were slumped. He was wearing yesterday's clothes. I buzzed the door. Robert walked in. He stopped at the edge of the rug. He didn't shout. He didn't demand. He looked at David Thorne, then at Paige, then at me. The bank called, he said, his voice hoarse. Swift Capital. They called the house line. I assume they want their $50,000, I said, staying seated. They said the payment is overdue, Robert said. They said they are going to refer it to the district attorney for fraud investigation because the business EIN doesn't match the bank account activity. He looked at me with wet, desperate eyes. Claire, he said, if they investigate, they will see I signed it. They will trace the IP. Yes, I said. They will. You have to stop it, he pleaded. Just call them. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you authorized it. I will pay you back. I swear, I am talking to a guy about a bridge loan on the house equity. There is no equity. Robert, Paige said from the side. You have a second mortgage and a home equity line of credit that is maxed out. You own negative 10% of that house. Robert flinched as if she had slapped him. He ignored her and focused on me. Claire, please, I am your father. You cannot let me go to jail. It would kill your mother. It would destroy the family name. The family name, I repeated. The name you used to steal from me. The name you are currently using to slander me to every cousin and aunt we have. I pulled up the screenshot of Diane's Facebook post on my monitor and turned it around so he could see it. You tell people I am a gambling addict, I said. You tell clients I am a scammer, and then you walk in here and ask me to commit perjury to save you from your own crime. Your mother, she is emotional, Robert stammered. She doesn't mean it. We can fix it. I will make her delete it. It is too late, I said. The damage is done. And the loan, that is not my debt. I filed an affidavit of identity theft with the police this morning. Robert stopped breathing. The color drained from his face completely. "Did you call the police?" "I told you I would," I said. "I told you what the conditions were. You leave the house, you admit the debt, you stop the lies. Instead, you doubled down. You attacked my business. You attacked my character." I stood up. "I am not the one sending you to jail, Dad. You are. You signed the paper. You spent the money." "I can't go to jail," he whispered. He sounded like a child. "I am 60 years old. I am a butler." "Then you better start talking to the district attorney," David Thorne said, stepping forward. "Because once that file is open, the only person who gets leniency is the one who cooperates against the co-conspirators." Robert looked at David, then back at me. He realized there was no negotiation. There was no family discount. "You are heartless," he spat, the desperation turning back into malice. "We raised a cold-hearted snake." "I learned from the best," I said. He turned and walked out. He didn't slam the door this time. He just left. A ghost of a man walking into a darkness he had created. I sat back down. I felt exhausted, hollowed out. "He isn't going to stop," I said to Paige. "He is scared, but he isn't sorry." Paige closed her laptop. She walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. "People like them don't have a rock bottom, Claire," she said quietly. "They don't have a moment of clarity where they realize they were wrong. They only stop when they run out of road." She looked at the door where Robert had exited. "And they just hit the cliff." I looked at the grand ledger on the table. The numbers hadn't changed, but the stakes had. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about survival. "Get the rest of the evidence ready," I said. "If they want to tell the family I'm a villain, let's show the family what a real villain looks like." The text message from my father arrived at 10 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. It was surprisingly brief, stripped of the usual bluster and demands. "We need to have a grown-up conversation. No shouting, no lawyers, just family. We want to settle this. Can we come to the studio at noon?" I showed the phone to Paige. She was sitting at my drafting table, organizing the stack of affidavits we had prepared the night before. "He says no lawyers," Paige noted, arching an eyebrow. "He means no lawyers for me," I said. "He wants to corner me. He thinks if he can get me alone, he can use the old trigger's guilt, obligation, the fear of being unloved to make me sign the checks again." "So, we accept," Paige said. "We accept," I agreed. "But we changed the rules." I texted back. "Noon, studio, just us." Technically, it wasn't a lie. David Thorne, my attorney, would not be sitting at the table. He would be standing in the adjacent office, the door cracked 3 inches, with a clear line of sight and a digital recorder running on the desk. At 11:55, the Range Rover pulled up. This time, they did not slam the doors. They walked into the studio with the somber, performative gravity of a family arriving at a funeral home. I had set the stage carefully. The grand ledger was gone. In its place was a clean, empty table, save for a pitcher of water and 4 glasses. I wanted them to feel safe. I wanted them to feel like the storm had passed, and we were entering the rebuilding phase. I sat at the head of the table. Paige sat to my right, notebook closed, looking benign. Diane, Robert, and Brielle took their seats. They looked tired. The last few days of social media silence and credit denials had taken a toll. Brielle, in particular, looked jittery. Her hands kept twitching toward her phone, which lay face down on the table. "Thank you for seeing us. Claire," Robert started. His voice was low, modulated to sound reasonable and paternal. "We have all said things we regret over the last few days." Tempers flared. "It is understandable." "Is it?" I asked, keeping my face neutral. "Of course," Diane chimed in, leaning forward. Her eyes were rimmed with red, a detail I suspected was enhanced with makeup. "We are a family. Claire, families fight. But we do not destroy each other. What you did cutting the cards, locking us out, it hurt. But more than that, it was embarrassing. She pulled a tissue from her sleeve and dabbed at her dry eyes. You made me lose face, Claire. She sniffed. I had to tell the catering company that there was a banking error. I had to lie to my friends. You humiliated your own mother. I felt a flicker of the old anger. But I tamped it down. I needed them to talk, not to shut down. You felt humiliated, I repeated calmly. That must have been hard. Kind of like how I felt when I watched you raise a glass of champagne on a live stream and thank God I wasn't there to ruin your aesthetic. Diane froze. The tissue hovered near her nose. That was a joke, she stammered. You know my sense of humor. You are too sensitive. Let's move past the feelings, Robert interrupted, sensing that Diane was losing ground. We are here to talk about solutions, practical solutions. I am listening, I said. Brielle sat up straighter. This was her cue. She looked at me with a desperate sort of eagerness, like a junkie trying to sell a stolen watch. Okay, so look, Brielle said, speaking fast. I have been thinking. The brand deals they are huge, potential millions, Claire, but I need liquidity to keep the momentum going. I need the Silver Lark account back on, and I need the credit line for the fall shoots. She paused, waiting for me to object. When I didn't, she continued, emboldened. So here's the offer, she said, spreading her hands as if unveiling a masterpiece. You turn the money back on, you pay off the Swift Capital loan so Daddy doesn't get in trouble, and in exchange, I will bring you in. Bring me in? I asked. I will tag Lumen and Vine in every post, Brielle said, her eyes widening. I mean, really tag you. Stories, reels, everything. I will tell my followers that you are my exclusive design partner. And I will give you 5% of every deal I close going forward. She sat back, looking triumphant. She actually thought this was a generous offer. She thought exposure on a fraudulent Instagram account was worth $500,000 of debt. I leaned forward, clasping my hands. I needed to get this on the record. That is an interesting proposal, Brielle, I said softly, but I need to understand the numbers. If I am going to invest because that is what this is, an investment, I need to see the real data. How much are these deals actually worth? Thousands, Brielle said. The skincare one alone is a $10,000 contract. But the brand manager emailed me, I said, lying smoothly. She said your engagement has dropped to 0 since Monday. How can you guarantee the deal if you don't have the numbers? That is why I need you to pay Silver Lark, Brielle blurted out. Don't you get it? The engagement is tied to the package. If you don't pay the $3,000 a month for the premium bot network, I don't get the comments. And if I don't get the comments, the brands don't pay. The room went silent. Paige's hand moved subtly across the table. She wrote something down on her notepad. So, I said slowly, ensuring the recording device in the next room caught every syllable. You are admitting that without the Silver Lark payments which I was funding, your engagement figures are fake, that the numbers you sold to the skincare brand were fabricated. It is not fake, Brielle argued, her voice rising to a whine. It is algorithmic enhancement. Everyone does it, Claire. You are so naive. You think people just get famous? You have to buy the traffic. Without the package, there are no stats. That is just how the industry works. I see, I said. So the $10,000 contract is based on data that disappears the moment I stop paying a click farm in Russia. It is an investment. Brielle screamed, God, you are so cheap! I turned my gaze to Robert. He was looking at Brielle with a mixture of annoyance and fear. He knew she had said too much. And the loan. Dad, I asked. The $50,000 from Swift Capital. Brielle says I should pay that off too. Why? Robert cleared his throat. He adjusted his cufflinks. A nervous tic I had watched for years. It was a bridge loan. Claire, he said. I told you. We were having cash flow issues with the house. I intended to pay it back immediately. You signed my name, I said. You used my company's EIN. That is not a loan. That is identity theft. I was acting as your financial advisor, Robert insisted. We are family. What is mine is yours. What is yours is mine. I needed to move capital. I borrowed it, just like I borrowed the money from your grandmother's trust. I froze. This was the one admission I wasn't sure I would get. The education fund, I said. The money Nana Rose left me. You borrowed that too. We invested it, Robert said, waving his hand dismissively. Brielle had the pageant fees. It was a sure thing. We were going to put it back. It was just we needed it right then. That was 16 years ago. Dad, I said, you borrowed my college tuition 16 years ago. When exactly were you planning to put it back? When the big deal came in, Robert shouted, slamming his hand on the table. When the investments paid off, stop acting like a forensic auditor. Claire, I am your father. I have a right to manage the family assets as I see fit. They were not family assets, I said, my voice dropping to a chill. They were mine. It is all the same pot, Robert yelled. No, a deep voice boomed from the doorway. It is not. Robert spun around in his chair. Diane gasped. David Thorne stepped into the room. He was holding a thick stack of documents. He did not look friendly. He looked like a sledgehammer in a suit. Who are you? Robert demanded, standing up. I said no lawyers. I am not here to negotiate, David said, walking to the table and placing the stack of papers down with a heavy thud. I am here to serve notice. He slid the first document toward Robert. This is a formal demand for repayment of $519,000, David said. It details the misappropriated funds, the unauthorized credit card charges, and the fraudulent loans taken out in my client's name. He slid the second document toward Brielle. This is a cease and desist order regarding the use of Lumen and Vine's intellectual property. It also includes a notice of intent to file a report with the Federal Trade Commission regarding your fraudulent advertising practices. Based on the admission you made approximately 3 minutes ago, Brielle's face went white. Did you listen? We are recording, David said calmly. South Carolina is a one-party consent state. Claire consented. You just confessed to wire fraud and deceptive trade practices. Diane stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the concrete. The mask of the hurt mother dropped completely, revealing the vicious, cornered animal underneath. You ungrateful little witch, she hissed at me. You set a trap for your own parents. I asked for the truth, I said. You gave it to me. You think this scares us? Diane sneered. We know people in this town. Claire, we have friends. If you try to sue us, if you try to drag our name through the mud, I will make sure you never work in Charleston again. I will tell everyone what you really are. I will tell them you are unstable. I will tell them you stole from us. I stood up slowly. I picked up the pitcher of water and poured myself a glass. My hand was steady. Go ahead, I said. Diane blinked. What? Do it, I said. Go to the country club. Go to your bridge group. Tell them I am crazy. Tell them I am a thief. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and unlocked it. I opened the screenshot of the Facebook post she had made in the family group, the one accusing me of being a gambling addict. You already started. Mom, I said. You already told the family I have a gambling problem. You already sent anonymous emails to my clients calling me a fraud. I tossed the phone onto the table. It slid across the surface and stopped in front of her. You have fired every bullet you have, I said. You have slandered me. You have stolen from me. You have humiliated me. And guess what? I am still standing. My business is still open. And I am the one with the recording of my father admitting to embezzling his daughter's inheritance. Diane looked at the phone, then at Robert. Robert was staring at the legal documents, his hands shaking uncontrollably. We can't pay this, Robert whispered. $500,000. We don't have it. I know, I said. That is why there is a second option. David Thorne opened the final folder. This is a settlement and release agreement, David said. He laid it out. Option A, David explained. We proceed with the lawsuits. We hand the recording of Brielle's confession to the FTC and her brand partners. We hand the recording of Robert's confession to the district attorney in Swift Capital. You will likely go to prison. You will definitely lose the house to foreclosure. Brielle let out a sob. I can't go to prison. Option B, David continued. You sign this agreement. You agree to vacate the Isle of Palms residence within 30 days, so it can be sold to pay down the debt. You acknowledge the full amount owed. You agree to a permanent non-disparagement clause, meaning if you ever speak Claire's name in public again, you are liable for $50,000 per incident, and you hand over administrative access to every account that uses Claire's name, today, right now. I looked at them. If you sign, I said, I won't file the police report for the Swift Capital loan. I will assume the debt myself and pay it off to save my credit score. I won't send the tape to the FTC. I will let you walk away with whatever dignity you have left. You want us to sell the house, Diane whispered. But where will we go? I don't know, I said. Maybe you can rent a small apartment. I hear North Charleston is affordable. This is blackmail, Robert said weakly. No, Dad, I said. Blackmail is what you did when you threatened to ruin my reputation if I didn't pay your bills. This is foreclosure. I looked at the clock on the wall. It is 12:30, I said. The bank closes at 5. If I don't have a signed agreement by 1 o'clock, David walks these files over to the DA. Claire, Brielle pleaded, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. Please, I am your sister. Then sign, I said. Save yourself. Brielle looked at the paper. She looked at her phone, the tool of her destruction. She realized that without me, without the money, without the bots, she was nothing. She grabbed the pen. Brielle, don't, Diane shouted. I am not going to jail for you. Mom, Brielle screamed back. She scribbled her signature on the line. She pushed the paper toward David. I signed. Don't send the tape. Robert looked at his daughter, then at his wife. The United Front had crumbled. The rats were fleeing the ship. He picked up the pen. Robert, Diane gasped. It's over. Diane, Robert said, his voice defeated. She has us. She has it all on tape. He signed. Diane stood there, alone, the queen without a court. She looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. I will never forgive you for this, she said. I didn't ask for your forgiveness, I replied. I asked for your signature. She snatched the pen from Robert's hand. She signed the document with a furious, jagged scrawl that nearly tore the paper. David Thorne took the documents. He checked the signatures. He nodded to me. It is done, he said. I looked at my family. They sat around the table, defeated, stripped of their power, bound by a contract that finally, legally, cut them off. You have 30 days to vacate the house, I said. Do not take the appliances. Do not take the fixtures. I will be doing a walkthrough with the realtor. Can we go? Robert asked. He sounded like an old man. Yes, I said. You can go. They stood up. They didn't look at each other. They walked out of the studio in a disjointed line, no longer a phalanx of entitlement, but 3 separate people realizing they had to survive on their own. When the door closed behind them, the silence returned, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was light. It was clean. I looked at Paige. She was beaming. Well, Paige said, closing her notebook, that is what I call a closing argument. Is it really over? I asked David. The bleeding is over, David said. Now, you just have to heal. I picked up the glass of water and took a sip. It tasted sweet. I can handle the healing, I said. I just needed the infection gone. I looked at the empty chairs. I had lost my parents. I had lost my sister. But as I looked around my studio, bathed in the natural light of the afternoon sun, I realized I had found the one thing they had tried to steal from me for 34 years, my life. The pen had hovered over the paper for an agonizing 10 seconds. That was how close we had been to a resolution. But in the end, Diane Butler could not surrender. She had snatched the pen from my father's shaking hand, thrown it across the studio floor, and looked at me with a sneer that curdled the air. "She is bluffing, Robert," she had hissed. "She won't send her own father to prison. She doesn't have the stomach for it. Come on, we are leaving." They had walked out. They had left the settlement unsigned. They had chosen war, and now, 24 hours later, they were trying to launch a nuclear strike. I stood at the command center in my studio, watching Paige pace back and forth with a phone pressed to her ear. The air was thick with the static of impending disaster. We had received intel from a sympathetic cousin that Diane was not hiding in shame. Instead, she had organized an emergency gathering at the home of Mrs. Vanderwall, the wealthiest matriarch in their social circle. The official reason was a planning committee for the summer gala, but the real agenda was an execution. Diane intended to present a sob story about her mentally unstable daughter who was trying to extort the family, effectively poisoning my reputation in Charleston forever. But that was not the worst part. Paige hung up the phone and turned to me. Her face was pale. "They are moving the house," she said. "What?" I asked. "I have a contact at the county clerk's office." Paige said rapidly. "An expedited deed transfer request just hit the system. Robert and Diane are attempting to quitclaim the Isle of Palms property to Betrayal for $1. I stared at her. "They are trying to hide the asset." "If the house is in Betrayal's name," Paige explained, "and we sue Robert and Diane for the debt, they can claim insolvency. They can say they have no assets to seize, and since the bank hasn't formally foreclosed yet, they are trying to slip it under the radar before the close of business today." "If they transfer that house," I said, my voice rising, "I lose everything. I lose the leverage. I lose the collateral for the debts I'm stuck with." "Exactly," Paige said. "They think they are outsmarting the system." I looked at David Thorne. He was already typing furiously on his laptop. "File the injunction," I said. "Now." "I am filing a lis pendens right now," David said, his voice calm, but his typing speed aggressive. "It is a formal notice of pending legal action concerning real estate. It effectively freezes the title. No notary will touch that deed once this is in the system, and I am sending a flag to the mortgage lender notifying them of unauthorized transfer of ownership, which triggers the due on sale clause." "Do it," I said. "Lock them down." While David deployed the legal blockade, I turned my attention to the other front. Betrayal. She was the one who was supposed to receive the house. She was the one who had called me cheap for not paying for her bots. She thought she was safe because she wasn't the one signing the checks. It was time to show her that gravity applied to everyone. I opened the folder on my desktop labeled Velvet and Moss. Final. This was the nuclear football. Inside was the recording of Betrayal's confession about the fake engagement numbers, the invoices from the bot farm, and the side-by-side comparison of her photoshopped results versus reality. "Are you sure?" Paige asked, seeing my cursor hover over the send button. "Once you do this, her career is dead. There is no coming back." "She killed her career when she built it on fraud," I said. "I am just writing the obituary." I hit send. The email went directly to the chief marketing officer of Velvet and Moss, as well as their legal compliance department. The reaction was almost instantaneous. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Betrayal. I put it on speaker. "What did you do?" she screamed. She sounded like she was hyperventilating. "Sarah just called me. She said they are voiding the contract. She said they are demanding a refund of the advance. She said they are blacklisting me." "I sent them the truth." "Betrayal," I said calmly. "I sent them the invoices you refused to pay." "You ruined my life," she wailed. "That was my biggest deal. They were going to take me to Paris. How could you do this? I am your sister." "You are not a sister," I said. "You are a liability, and I am mitigating my risk. I can't pay them back." Betrayal sobbed, her voice cracking. "I spent the advance. I used it to pay off the other thing." I froze. "What other thing?" There was a silence on the other end, heavy and terrified. "Betrayal," I said sharply. "What other thing?" "The car," she whispered. "I leased a Porsche, in your name. using the company AN. I told the dealership I was the VP of marketing for Lumen and Vine. The payments are $2,000 a month. I haven't paid in 3 months. I used the advance to stop the repo man. I looked at Paige. Her jaw had dropped. They hadn't just stolen cash. They had leased a luxury vehicle in my name without me knowing. "Where is the car?" "Brielle?" I asked, my voice deadly quiet. "It is at the party," she sniffed. "Mom drove it. She wanted to look rich for Mrs. Vanderwall." That was it, the final straw. The bridge didn't just burn, it disintegrated. "David," I said, hanging up on my screaming sister, "do we have the fraud affidavit ready?" "Printed and notarized," David said. "Grab it," I said. "We are going to a party." We drove to the Battery, the historic district where the old money lived. Mrs. Vanderwall's house was a mansion with white pillars and a driveway full of Mercedes and Lexuses, and there, parked right in the front, was a white Porsche Macan. I checked the license plate against the document Paige had just pulled up. It was my car, technically, legally, and stealing it was a felony. "Do not make a scene at the door," David advised as we walked up the steps. "Walk in like you own the place. You are a butler, after all." I didn't feel like a butler. I felt like the angel of death, the butler a real one. Not a surname opened the door. He recognized me. "Miss Claire," he said, looking confused. "Your mother said you were indisposed, in a facility." "My mother is mistaken," I said, brushing past him. "I am feeling quite clear-headed." I followed the sound of voices to the drawing room. The double doors were open. Inside, about 20 women were sitting on floral sofas, holding teacups and glasses of sherry. My mother was standing by the fireplace. She looked tragic and noble, holding a handkerchief. "And it breaks a mother's heart," Diane was saying, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "To see your child spiral like this, the gambling, the drugs, we have tried everything. We have paid her debts until we have nothing left, and now she attacks us. It is just the addiction talking." The room murmured with sympathetic clucking sounds. "You poor dear," Mrs. Vanderwall said. "You have been a saint, Diane." "She really has," Brielle added from the corner, looking pale but sticking to the script. "We just want Claire to get help." I stepped into the doorway. The click of my boots on the hardwood floor was sharp and loud. "I do not need help," I said clearly. "I need a receipt." The room went deathly silent. Every head turned. Diane's face went from tragic to terrified in a split second. "Claire," she stammered, "what are you doing here? You are making a scene." "I am not here to make a scene, Mom," I said, walking into the center of the room. "I am here to correct the record. You asked for 60 seconds of my time to ruin my life. I think I have earned 60 seconds to explain where the money actually went." I reached into my tote bag. I didn't pull out a weapon. I pulled out a tablet and a stack of papers. "Claire, stop," Robert said, stepping out from the shadows near the bar. "Do not do this. We can talk outside." "No," I said. "We talk here, in front of the audience you curated." I placed the tablet on the coffee table in front of Mrs. Vanderwall. I hit play. It was the clip from the live stream. The audio filled the quiet room. Thank God Claire isn't here to ruin the aesthetic. She is just a freeloader clinging to the family name. The women in the room looked at Diane. Diane turned bright red. "That was out of context," Diane gasped. "Here is the context," I said. I slammed the stack of papers down next to the tablet. "This is a bank statement showing a monthly transfer of $3,900 from my account to yours for the last 5 years, I said, pointing at Diane. "Totaling $234,000 for housing maintenance. While you called me a freeloader," I tossed another document. "This is a loan application for $50,000 signed by Claire Butler, but traced to the IP address of your house on Isle of Palms. That is bank fraud." I looked at Brielle. "And this," I said, holding up the invoice from Silverlark. Is the $28,000 bill for the bought farm you used to fake your popularity paid for by my credit card? And the lease agreement for the Porsche parked outside, which you took out in my name without my consent? The silence in the room was absolute. It was the kind of silence that happens when a social hierarchy is instantly, violently inverted. Mrs. Vanderwall picked up the bank statement. She put on her reading glasses. She looked at Diane. "Diane," Mrs. Vanderwall said, her voice freezing over. "Is this true? Have you been living off your daughter while asking us for charity?" "It is complicated," Diane shrieked, losing her composure entirely. "She is manipulating the numbers she owes us. We raised her." "You didn't raise me," I said. "You leveraged me." Robert lunged forward. He grabbed my arm. His grip was painful. "That is enough," he shouted, his face purple. "You ungrateful brat. Get out. I am taking you home." "Let go of her," a voice thundered. David Thorne stepped into the room. He didn't look like a lawyer anymore. He looked like a bouncer. "Touch my client again," David said, "and I will add assault to the list of felonies we are filing with the district attorney this afternoon." Robert released me as if I were burning hot. He stumbled back. "Client," Robert whispered, "we just filed a lis pendens on the house," Paige announced, stepping in beside David. "The transfer to Betrayal is blocked. The bank has been notified of the fraud, and the police are on their way to recover the stolen vehicle parked in the driveway." Betrayal let out a scream and ran toward the window, looking at the Porsche as if it were a dying pet. "You called the cops?" Betrayal shrieked. "I told you," I said to the room. "I am not a freeloader." I looked at my mother. She had collapsed onto the sofa, weeping, not the pretty, fake weeping from earlier, but the ugly, gasping sobs of a woman who knows her social life is over. The women around her were already inching away, distancing themselves from the contagion of scandal. "I am a sponsor," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I have sponsored your house. I have sponsored your clothes. I have sponsored your lies. But as of today..." I reached down and picked up the tablet. "The sponsorship has stopped." I turned around. I walked past my father, who was staring at the floor. I walked past Betrayal, who was hyperventilating. I walked past the shocked faces of Charleston's elite. "Claire," Robert called out, his voice cracking, "where are you going? You can't leave us like this." I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. "I am going to work," I said. I walked out the front door, down the steps, and into the waiting car with David and Paige. "Did we get the car?" Paige asked as we pulled away. "The tow truck is 2 minutes out," David said. "It is over." We drove back to the studio in silence. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was the feeling of a heavy pack being dropped after a 10-mile hike. When we arrived, the sun had set. The warehouse was dark. I unlocked the door. I walked in. The smell of eucalyptus and cold air greeted me. It smelled like freedom. I walked to the main breaker panel. My family had tried to dim my light. They had tried to make me small so they could feel big. They had tried to tell the world that I was nothing without them. I reached out and flipped the master switch. Clack! The overhead lights blazed to life. The rows of flowers illuminated in brilliant color pinks, whites, greens. The steel tables shone. The space was vast and full and entirely mine. There were no shadows here anymore, no secrets, no debts. I stood in the center of the room, bathing in the artificial sun I had paid for with my own sweat. I took a deep breath. I was Claire Butler, and I was open for business. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you enjoyed seeing Claire finally take her power back, please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear where you are tuning in from and what you thought of that final showdown. Don't forget to subscribe to the Maya Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more people. See you in the next one.